Before we begin, let's slow everything down. You're not here to learn dates, or memorize rules, or keep track of every name. This channel exists for quiet watching, for long stories told gently, from a distance, where nothing is urgent. We walk through strange worlds and broken timelines the way Prismo watches them from the center of time, calmly, patiently, letting moments unfold without rushing them. If you're still awake, and you want more journeys like this waiting for you later, you can quietly subscribe or leave a like. And if you're already drifting, that's perfect. Let's begin. The door does not open. It yields. Metal that was old before your universe cooled folds inward with the soft sigh of a tired lung. A lone figure steps through the gap, not a hero, not a thief, just a quiet librarian of realities with ink on their fingers and dust on their sleeves. And the vault of forgotten relics inhales them whole. Dark, not empty. The dark here is thick, velvety textured, like the inside of a closed eye right before a dream begins. Shelves rise on either side, marching away into an invisible horizon. Stacked so high they vanish into a ceiling that might be stone, might be sky, might be the underbelly of time itself. Between those shelves, artifacts hum, not loudly. A low electric buzz, like distant power lines in a fog, like the quiet static of a universe thinking to itself. Dust motes drift in a single shaft of moonlight that has no business being this deep underground. They turn slowly, lazily, as if even gravity has agreed to keep its voice down. There is a faint smell of old incense and colder metal, of pages that have absorbed centuries of whispered prayers. Think about that for a second. Every object here has been touched by hands that were afraid, or hopeful, or both. On the left, the tablets of destiny squat on a pedestal of black basalt, their cuneiform grooves glowing like cooled lava remembering it was once fire. They do not move, but they radiate the bored authority of a cosmic administrator who has seen every wish, every desire, every failed rebellion against the rules written in stone. On the right, a sword sleeps in a translucent block of weathered rock. Excalibur. The metal gleams as if it is underwater, as if it is listening for the sound of a kingdom in crisis. Here is the thing. Some of these artifacts were never meant to be touched again. The vault knows that. You can feel it in the way certain shelves lean back, just slightly, when the librarian passes, as if the objects themselves are holding their breath. A hammer wrapped in stormlight, Mjolnir, hangs in the air on 3 delicate chains of rusted iron, each link etched with runes that crawl when you are not looking. The air around it smells like distant rain hitting hot stone. Farther in, behind a pane of glass that reflects stars you do not recognize, sits a small gilded chest, the Ark of the Covenant. It does not glow, it does not crackle. It just waits, with the patient menace of a courtroom that has already decided the verdict. Nearby, something far more modest. A dull reddish stone in a cracked iron dish. The Philosopher's Stone, looking exactly like the kind of rock you would kick down the road and forget, except for the way reality bends microscopically around it, like heat above a candle. We're going to walk these aisles tonight. Slowly, gently. In this video, the tour is high stakes in concept, but low impact on your nervous system, because every dangerous relic is double shelved behind layers of narration, and you are safely horizontal in your own timeline. There is tension here, yes. Names that, if shouted, would wake old wars. Relics that twisted history simply by existing, that pulled empires toward them the way a black hole pulls light. But our librarian moves with the quiet authority of someone who knows which objects can be stroked like sleeping cats, and which must never be looked in the eye. You are not here to wield them. You are here to listen to them dream. As the door seals behind you with a soft, irreversible click, the vault settles. Shelves straighten. 1,000 artifacts adjust the weight of their memories. Somewhere, A distant clock that might belong to no particular universe at all ticks once, then decides that is enough effort for tonight. By the end of this walk, by the time your own eyes slip closed, you will understand why humans keep pouring their fears, their hopes, their wildest desires into rings and stones and blades. Why simple objects keep ending up with the power to tilt entire timelines. And you might notice the quiet, unnerving pattern beneath all of it. While people slept, their artifacts kept working, reshaping existence in the dark, one forgotten wish at a time. Why humans gave the universe a cabinet of magic objects. So here is the thing. Once you notice that pattern, you realize humanity has been quietly building a cabinet for the universe, a vault of wishes you can touch. Every culture, every timeline, keeps tucking its fears and its hopes into metal and stone, as if reality will listen more carefully if you whisper through a ring instead of your own mouth. In this video, we're going to open that cabinet. Slowly, gently, we're going to trace the complete story of ancient magical artifacts, where they came from, what people believed they could do, and what those beliefs expose about human desire, fear, and the strange loneliness of existing in a universe that does not send you a manual. Think about that for a second. When the cosmos feels indifferent, you invent objects that pretend to answer back. At the emotional center of all of this, there is not just power, there is heartbreak. A Mesopotamian scribe imagines the tablets of destiny, slabs that decide the fate of gods and humans, because someone needs to be in charge of this mess. An Egyptian family tucks a heart scarab over the chest of their dead, begging it to silence the heart during judgment so it will not confess too much. That is not just ritual, that is anxiety carved into stone. Protection and guilt, love and terror of cosmic audits. Let's start by admitting what these artifacts really are: containers for loneliness and bargaining. A cursed Norse sword like turfing, perfectly sharp but demanding blood every time it's drawn, is a negotiation with violence itself. Chinese jade burial suits and discs turn mineral into armor against decay, a quiet refusal to accept that bodies and memories dissolve. A dream catcher over a bed, a scrying mirror in a darkened room, an incense burner in a temple. Each one says the same thing in a different accent. Please, if anyone is listening at the center of time, edit this timeline in my favor. We'll move through mythic origins across the multiverse of cultures: Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, China, Mesoamerica, Norse sagas. We'll visit legendary weapons and regalia: Excalibur, Mjolnir, the trident of Poseidon, philosopher's stones and spears that decide empires, and then descend into quieter shelves: protective charms, cursed rings, haunted mirrors, forbidden grimoires that promise power over reality if you're willing to read in the dark. And here is where the rules arrive: worthiness tests, guardians, one-use-only wishes, artifacts that work but only at terrible cost. You will hear how those rule systems echo into modern fantasy worlds, how every game and movie you know is secretly copying clay tablets and grave goods. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the universe keeps saying, yes, you can have power, but not for free. Through all of this, I'll be your calm guide. Imagine a cosmic librarian or archivist walking you down endless aisles while you lie still, eyes heavy, as we label each object not just with its abilities, but with the emotion that forged it. By the time you drift off, you'll be able to picture this vault clearly, recognize the artifacts on its shelves, and understand why each one mattered so much to the people who dared to wish through it. Tonight's map, from tablets of destiny to dream catchers. So tonight, before we start actually pulling artifacts off the shelves, we're going to lay out the map. Not a treasure map with big red X's, but a quiet cosmic floor plan of the vault you're about to walk through in your mind. Let's start with the first corridor, the Cosmic Control Arc. Here, the artifacts don't just protect a single person or win a single battle. They lean over the entire universe and adjust the dials. You'll drift past the Mesopotamian tablets of destiny, those clay command scripts that told gods and humans where they belonged in the timeline. And the Ark of the Covenant, an ornate box that was somehow a throne, a weapon, and a contract with reality itself. We'll move quickly enough that you don't get stuck on any one detail, but we'll slow down to feel the grooves in the tablets, the gold leaf on the ark, the weight of an object that claims to manage existence. From there, we turn into the Kings and Swords arc, Excalibur sliding out of the stone, Kusanagi lifted from the tail of an 8-headed serpent, Mjolnir arcing through the air and deciding who is worthy. This is where power wears metal and has very clear rules about who gets to hold it. We'll keep the pace brisk, like watching battles in the distance, but we'll pause to linger on textures, rain on a battlefield helmet, fingerprints on a sword hilt, the quiet moment before a king realizes the weapon chose them. Think about that for a second. In these stories, the blade is the one making the wish. Then we dim the lights and step into the protection and curse arc. Here is the thing. Not every artifact wants what you want. We'll start simple, with heart scarab amulets laid over a mummy's chest, whispering, "Stay quiet," so the heart doesn't confess too much at judgment, and with jade discs used as armor against decay, tiny green shields against oblivion. Then we'll let the mood deepen into cursed blades that demand blood every time they leave their sheaths, haunted rings that tighten like a promise you regret making. We're going to move slowly here, on purpose, letting each object feel like a small philosophical question about cost. After that comes the dream and vision arc, where reality goes soft around the edges, oracles breathing incense and speaking in riddles, scrying mirrors that act like low-resolution portals in a very high-definition multiverse, dream catchers hanging above a bed, pretending to moderate the flow of nightmares like tiny guardians at the center of time. We'll build from the easy idea, an object that keeps you safe while you sleep, to stranger artifacts that blur waking and dreaming until your mind can gently lose track of which is which. All the way through, we'll keep circling a few quiet questions. What rules govern these objects? What do they cost? Does their power come from gods, from secret knowledge, or from human belief pressing so hard on reality that it finally gives in? In this video, each arc will climb from simple concrete charms to artifacts that feel like edits to the script of existence itself. And somewhere near the end, we'll open one last cabinet, reserved for the strangest category of all, objects that don't just grant a wish, but quietly rewrite the story of the world while no one is looking. We won't get there yet, but you might be almost asleep by the time we do. Get cozy in the Cosmic Library soft CTA and setup, so before we crack open that last cabinet of reality editing relics, you should probably do one small, very human ritual of your own. Make yourself comfortable. Let the grand Cosmic Library wait for a moment while you adjust your pillow, pull the blanket up, maybe tilt your screen away so the light falls softer, like a lantern turned down in the far corner of a vault. Here is the thing. Every myth we're going to wander through tonight was told in the dark, around fires, in lamplit temples, under roofs where the universe felt very big and very close. So if you can, dim the lights, let the room fall into that gentle pre-dream twilight where the edges of objects blur, and you can almost pretend you're already in a corridor lined with shelves of impossible artifacts. Let's start by tuning your attention, not to the visuals, but to the sound, to this voice, as if it's echoing very quietly along stone walls, past glass cases, past the faint glimmer of jade burial suits, and heart scarab amulets that once promised to silence a guilty heart at the final judgment. You don't have to watch, you can just listen. Let the words move at their own pace through your awareness, the way time itself slides through the center of time in some very relaxed multiverse bureaucracy. And while we're setting all of that up, this is a good moment for a gentle, practical wish. If you want to come back to this library of strange objects whenever you need to drift off, You can like the video, subscribe, or follow, not as a loud algorithmic command, but as a quiet label on the shelf, the place where I fall asleep to the universe's gossip. Think about that for a second. Of all the timelines where you scroll endlessly, this is the one where you file away a doorway back to calm. We're going to make that engagement feel like participation, not homework, as we move through Mesopotamian tablets of destiny, Egyptian wands and scarabs, Norse swords that demand blood every time they're drawn. You can mentally tag your favorite artifact, the one you'd borrow for a single dream. No consequences, one night-only rental from the cosmic circulation desk. Later, if you feel like it, you can tell me in the comments which object you chose and why that particular desire rose to the surface of your half-asleep mind. Now listen for a new sound, soft footsteps on old stone, the hush of robes or a coat brushing against the air. A lantern clicks, and its glow turns toward the first shelf, where an engraved plate reads, "Origins. The universe holds its breath," politely. We are still in a bedtime story. Even when we talk about curses, about power, about artifacts that can tilt an entire timeline, this will stay slow, gentle, like someone who knows all the dangerous secrets of existence, but is telling them to you the way you'd tell a child about thunder. Calmly, honestly, with the edges sanded down so the fear can drain away and only the awe remains. Why we put the infinite inside small things. So here is the thing. The objects themselves are small, a ring no thicker than your finger, a stone you could skip across a pond, a scroll that would crumple if you breathed on it too hard. And yet, in story after story, these are the hinges of entire worlds, the places where reality quietly agrees to turn. Let's start with that contrast, because it's everywhere once you see it. A tiny ring that carries a world-ending curse, a simple stone that promises immortality, a fragile scroll that holds a thunderous divine command. In Mesopotamia, the tablets of destiny are just tablets, but whoever holds them becomes the administrator of the universe, the one who edits the cosmic spreadsheet of fate. Think about that for a second. You are holding a rock, and suddenly the gods have to file their requests through you. Artifacts live between scales, between your hand and the horizon, between the mundane and the cosmic. They sit between fear and hope, between control and surrender, between the chaos of nature and the order of human ritual. A jade burial suit in ancient China lies between decay and preservation. An Egyptian heart scarab lies between confession and silence, between "I did it" and "No, I absolutely did not." These are not just objects. They are borders you can touch. We're going to treat them for a moment as technology. Not metal and gears, but emotional technology. You take your anxiety about death and you pour it into a stone that protects your grave. You take your hunger for justice and you pour it into a spear that never misses, or a sword that only the worthy can lift. You take your longing for protection and you pour it into a talisman you can wear under your shirt. The feeling becomes external, portable. You can put it on, you can lock it away. And once that happens, the artifact starts to behave like a character. Excalibur is not just a sword. It chooses kings, sulks in stones, disappears into lakes. Mjolnir pouts when it can't be lifted, flies back to Thor's hand like a very enthusiastic metal dog. The Ark of the Covenant has rules about how close you can get, what happens if you peek, how reality reacts when you break the terms of the contract. The tablets of destiny get stolen, reclaimed, fought over, like recurring figures in humanity's shared dream. They have personalities. They have narrative arcs they remember. So when we whisper about an artifact's power, what are we actually talking about? Are we talking about gods, or about the human imagination deciding what the universe should feel like, what the rules of existence ought to be if someone finally listened to our secret wish? In this video of ancient dreams and very solid objects, That question will sit quietly at the center of time, while we open the cabinet of artifacts and keep going, one small infinite relic at a time. The first shelf, Mesopotamia's tablets of destiny. So let's start with the shelf that looks the least dramatic and secretly holds the whole universe together. You reach up, very gently, and your fingers close around a rectangle of clay that was, in some stories, more dangerous than any sword, more decisive than any thunderbolt. Before Excalibur, before cursed rings, before philosopher's stones, there were the tablets of destiny. Here is the thing. Mesopotamia imagines reality as layered. Above, tiered heavens where gods argue like ministers in a cosmic cabinet meeting. Below, the deep, chaotic waters, a kind of primordial error state of the universe, always waiting to roll back in and delete creation. In between, this thin strip of land and river and city where humans build temples and write contracts and try to pretend that the sky isn't full of ongoing negotiations about whether they get to exist tomorrow. Think about that for a second. Your whole timeline is basically a side effect of divine office politics. In that atmosphere, the tablets of destiny are not just props. They are the paperwork of existence. Whoever holds them doesn't merely have power, they have authorization. The tablets literally inscribe fate, which god rules, which city thrives, which king's wish gets quietly routed to the spam folder of the cosmos. In some myths, they hang on the chest of Enlil. In others, they're claimed by Marduk after he defeats the sea dragon Tiamat. But the logic is the same. The tablets are the cosmic administrator's badge, the root password for reality. And because this is myth, of course they get stolen. Of course the universe lets the password file just walk out the door. In the Anzu myth, a stormbird spirit swipes the tablets of destiny from Enlil while the god is bathing, and suddenly the whole divine bureaucracy crashes. Prayers bounce. Authority desynchronizes. The heavens lose their chain of command, and the world hangs there, lagging, until a replacement hero goes on a very ancient, very bureaucratic quest to get the documents back. It feels big and cosmic, but it's also exactly a palace coup in clay form. The rules are strangely clean. Whoever holds the tablets has lawful power. Not symbolic power, not vibes-based legitimacy, but binding contractual authority over gods and humans. Yet those same tablets can be misplaced, tricked away, seized by force. Fate is written, but apparently it can be pickpocketed. Destiny is absolute, but it can also be badly filed. That tension is the whole mood. The universe is run by rules, and the rules themselves can be yanked out of the filing cabinet. We're going to zoom out for a moment, because this is where the tablets of destiny quietly invent a pattern you see everywhere later. Fate as an object, not a whisper, not an omen, but a physical artifact you can touch, store, maybe even edit if you dare. Mesopotamian scribes live in a world where writing is new, magical, and terrifying. So of course they imagine the ultimate power as a written tablet, a cosmic legal code that could in theory be taken back from the gods. Are we talking about theology here, or about the first humans to realize that whoever controls the archive controls reality? As you set the tablets of destiny back on the shelf, the clay cool and heavy in your hands, another shape waits in the half-dark, made not of earth but of polished stone, and weighing the human heart itself, Egypt's heart scarabs and the silence of judgment, polished stone, and weighing the human heart itself. Let's start in a room that is not really a room, a hall of judgment that is also a scale hanging somewhere between earth and the cosmic paperwork department. On one side, your heart. On the other, a single feather, the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth, balance, and the quiet, relentless rules that keep the universe from collapsing into nonsense. No lawyers, no character witnesses, just you, your heart, and the measure of your existence. In Egyptian imagination, this is not a metaphor. This is procedure. The dead stand before Osiris, while Anubis adjusts the scales with the calm of someone who has done this a billion times. Thoth waits nearby, stylus ready, like a divine court reporter for the multiverse. And here is the thing: the terrifying part is not the gods. The terrifying part is that your own heart might suddenly start talking. It might remember every lie, every betrayal, every small cruelty you hoped time had erased. So people do what humans always do when faced with cosmic exposure. They reach for an artifact. The heart scarab is a carved stone beetle, often dark green, sometimes glossy and heavy, placed over the mummy's chest, right where the heart should be. On its flat underside, priests inscribe spell 30B from the Book of the Dead, which is less poetry and more "please don't snitch," written in hieroglyphs. It literally addresses the heart. Do not stand up against me as a witness. Do not tell lies in the presence of the god. This is not an item of flashy power. It will not shoot lasers. It will not let you pause time or hop timelines, or wish yourself a pyramid. What it does is quieter and, in a way, more audacious. It tries to negotiate with cosmic justice itself. It asks the universe to consider redacting certain passages, to let a flawed human slide past annihilation, not by denying the rules, but by softening the evidence that those rules will weigh. Think about that for a second. Your heart, in this system, is both you and not you, an internal witness that might be more honest than your conscious self ever was. The scarab steps in as a kind of spiritual public defender, pressed against the chest, whispering, "Shh, don't say everything." There is anxiety there, shame, but also hope that ritual and carved stone can stand between your worst moments and the final verdict on your existence. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, even though we're in ancient Egypt and not the center of time, the pattern feels familiar. We're going to see it again and again tonight. Objects that argue with the universe, Mesopotamian tablets of destiny that try to edit fate, Egyptian heart scarabs that try to mute guilt, later rings, swords, mirrors, all negotiating who deserves to continue. Every artifact is a small, stubborn brief filed against reality's default setting. As we leave the weighing hall, the scales still swinging almost imperceptibly, another shape waits on the shelf ahead, not for your heart this time, but for your dreams themselves. India's divine weapons, astras and the grammar of power, not for your heart this time, but for your dreams themselves. Let's start with a whisper that sounds like a bowstring being drawn in the dark. On this next shelf, the weapons are sleeping. But they are not just blades or arrows, they are sentences in a language of power. In the epics of India, in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, a weapon is not really a weapon until it has a word, a deity, and a rule. They call them astras, and they are less like swords and more like executable prayers. Here is the thing: an astra is a wish that has learned to fall as fire. Each one belongs to a god or to an element that behaves like a god. The Agni Astra burns like a focused piece of the sun. The Vunastra pours the ocean into a single, precise catastrophe. The Pashupatastra, belonging to Shiva, is so cosmically lethal that the texts almost flinch when they describe it, insisting it should never actually be used in our timeline of existence. Think about that for a second. A weapon so dangerous the story itself backs away. To call an astra, a hero doesn't just swing. He speaks. He remembers. He orients his body and mind in exactly the right direction, as if turning himself into an antenna pointed at the center of time. In the Kurukshetra war, warriors like Arjuna and Karna stand on their chariots reciting mantras, aligning breath, name and trajectory, launching arrows that are basically compiled code. Combat becomes a ritual protocol. You need the correct invocation, the correct moment, and crucially, the correct counter-astra. Fire meets water, wind meets mountain, illusion meets dispelling light. It is a duel of libraries. We're going to notice something quietly terrifying here. These weapons run on rules, but the rules are not safe. Many astras can only be used once. Some must never be aimed at humans. Others, if misused, threaten to unmake the universe by accident, like a poorly written line of cosmic software. When Ashwatthama unleashes the Narayanastra or the Brahmashira, the narrative pauses, horrified, to explain that this is escalation beyond anyone's desire. Not bravery, not glory, just the looming possibility that reality itself becomes collateral damage. So an astra is not really an object you own. It is a contract you temporarily embody. You borrow the gods' power, and in return you accept their clauses. No free upgrades, no lifetime warranty. If you call the weapon in anger, you answer for the fallout. The hero is less a warrior and more a licensed operator of divine APIs, audited by the cosmos, punished if he violates the terms of use. Even victory feels like paperwork, and somewhere else in the vault, behind all these rule-bound, mantra-locked projectiles, another cabinet is humming. Not with contracts, but with curses, blades that don't ask for the right words, only for the right amount of blood. In the Norse corner of this multiverse, some weapons wake up hungry every single time they're drawn. Norse cursed blades and the price of drawing steel. Turfing is humming in the dark of that cabinet. You don't see it at first. You feel it. A kind of pressure in the air, like the room itself is holding its breath, waiting to see who's foolish enough to pull the blade free. On the surface, it's perfect. Forged by dwarves, flawless edge. It never rusts, it never misses. It cuts through armor and probability with the same casual ease. Here is the thing. In the saga, that perfection is the bait. Turfing comes with 3 curses welded into its very existence, and the loudest one is simple enough to write on a sticky note. Every time it's drawn, it demands a life. Not metaphorically, not eventually. Unsheathe, and someone on that timeline is going to die. The sword guarantees victory in battle, but it also guarantees that the battle never really ends, because the debt keeps rolling forward through children, grandchildren, unlucky bystanders who are just trying to exist in peace. So the weapon becomes a character. It's not thinking, but it behaves like an algorithm, with bloodlust, a piece of cosmic code that keeps rerunning the same brutal function. If blade equals out, then life equals owed. Think about that for a second. A tool that doesn't wait for your intention, doesn't care about your wish, doesn't differentiate between self-defense and murder. It only cares about satisfying the rule. Families in these sagas inherit not just land or titles, but a kind of sentient obligation to keep spilling blood, so the universe doesn't snap the blade back on them instead. We're going to slow down here, because this is where it quietly rhymes with those Indian astras. Astras ask for mantras, for precision, for the right ritual key. They feel like contracts with cosmic administrators. Turfing feels like a predatory loan. The astras might misfire if you break the rules, but turfing's rule is the misfire. It turns power into a trap you walk into every single time you reach for safety. The narrative function is harsh and elegant. The sword ensures you win the fight, and ensures that winning the fight ruins your life. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, the universe is almost deadpan about it. There are other Norse blades like this, weapons that never dull and never fail, as if reality is offering you a perfect shortcut and then quietly attaching an eternal subscription fee of violence. Contrast that with the protective artifacts we've met. Amulets that soothe nightmares, dream catchers that filter the multiverse of images over your bed, talismans meant to shield you from harm. Some objects are cosmic blankets. Some are loaded guns with personalities. Pattern interrupt. Just for a moment. Imagine turfing hanging above your bed right now. You're lying there in the dark, drifting at the center of time in your own tiny universe of blankets and breathing, and that perfect sword is inches above you. You know the rule. If anyone draws it, someone must die. Do you sleep better, knowing you're protected by unstoppable power, or worse, knowing that your safety has been converted into a constant, silent threat? And then we step back, because in this video, we're not actually hanging cursed blades over your pillow. We're just walking past them in the Museum of Human Desire, noting how often we imagine power that can't be used without breaking us. From here, the shelves are going to tilt again, away from blades and toward objects that don't demand blood at all, but attention: mirrors, oracles, and quiet surfaces where reality itself supposedly comes to look back at you. China's jade armor against time and evil. So we leave the sharp edges behind, those mirrors that cut, and we walk sideways in the Museum of the Universe into something quieter, stone that wants to be eternal. Not obsidian, not glass, but jade. Cool green and pretending it has all the time in the world. China takes that pretense and turns it into an entire technology of immortality. Let's start with what jade meant before it ever touched a corpse. In ancient Chinese thought, jade is not just a pretty rock. It is character made visible, purity, because it can be polished until it glows without losing itself. Durability, because you can bury it for 1,000 years and it comes back up basically unchanged, like it just ignored time's notification bell. And then this other layer, a connection to the immortal, as if its refusal to decay made it a local loophole in reality's usual rules. Here is the thing: if you live in a world where everything rots, anything that doesn't rot starts to look like a door, or at least a lock. So when the Han emperors start commissioning jade burial suits, they are not just being extra with their funeral fashion. They are trying to armor themselves in the one material that seems to have negotiated better terms with existence. A jade burial suit is absurd and meticulous at the same time. Thousands of tiny jade plaques hand-cut, each one drilled at the corners, sewn together with gold or silver wire into a full-body casing. A hood, a torso shell, sleeves, leggings, even little jade socks. The dead ruler is zipped into this mineral exoskeleton and laid in the tomb like a sealed wish. May this body not decay. May no malevolent force find purchase. May time itself slide off the surface and go bother someone else. Think about that for a second. You are already in a stone chamber, inside a mountain, under a mound. You have walls, guards, curses, and still they add another layer, plate by plate, as if the universe might try to sneak in through the pores. This is not casual superstition. This is siege warfare against entropy. Alongside the suits, there are the discs, the jade bi-flat perfect circles with a hole in the center, laid on chests, under backs, near hands. Simple declarative shape, cosmic metaphor. Heaven as a round dome, earth as a square, the bi as a portable slice of the sky. The central hole is an axis, a little center of time you can carry with you, a promise of alignment with the larger order when your personal timeline shuts down. So the logic goes like this. The suit guards the flesh from rot and demons. The bi-disc negotiates your safe passage through the invisible bureaucracy of the afterlife. Armor on the outside, passport on the inside. Stone as shield, stone as boarding pass. And under all of that is a very human psychology. We're going to read these not as exotic relics, but as extremely committed anxiety blankets. You cannot know what happens after death, so you make a wish in mineral form, that the rules of the universe will recognize your rank, your effort, your careful geometry, and let you continue. You turn fear of oblivion into a design problem, and then solve it with 2,000 jade rectangles. Some cultures, as we've seen, hang blades over the bed of eternity. Here they sew you into a quiet green cocoon and hand you a disc that says, "I belong to the cosmos, please forward." But not everyone chooses armor. In the next chamber of this museum, the logic flips. Instead of protecting a body, a different people build a portable throne for their god. a charged container that can march into battle and bend reality around it. If jade suits are about not moving at all, the Ark of the Covenant is about making divinity mobile. The Ark of the Covenant, throne, weapon, and warning label. So you walk from the still, stone weight of the jade armor into the next chamber, and the energy changes instantly. The air feels charged, like the moment before lightning hits. In the center of the room sits a box that is not just a box, a shape that your brain reads as furniture, but your spine reads as warning. Let's start with the visual, because the Ark of the Covenant is aggressively dramatic. Picture a rectangular chest made of acacia wood, completely overlaid with gold, so every surface catches and bends the light like frozen sunlight. On top, a solid gold lid called the mercy seat, and rising from that lid, two winged cherubim facing each other, their wings sweeping forward and touching, forming a kind of golden horizon line. No handles on the sides, only rings for poles because human hands are never supposed to touch the Ark directly. It travels suspended, not held. Carried on long poles on the shoulders of priests, it moves through the world like a portable singularity of presence, radiant and beautiful, and very explicitly lethal. Here is the thing. The Ark is multi-tool theology. It is a throne, and also a container, and also a weapon, and also, weirdly, a communication device. In the stories, the invisible presence of God is said to sit or rest above the mercy seat between those wings, so you're looking at a footstool for a cosmic king. Inside the chest, you get the sacred archive of that relationship with reality itself. The stone tablets of the covenant, a jar of manna like a preserved miracle in Tupperware, and Aaron's rod that once flowered as a sign of chosen authority. On the battlefield, the Ark marches at the front like a standard, and enemies panic as though the universe itself has taken a side. In the sanctuary, a high priest approaches the Ark once a year to hear from God, the space between the cherubim becoming a kind of divine microphone, a hotline to the center of time. But power comes with rules. Very clear rules. Only certain priests may approach. Only in prescribed ways. The poles must stay in the rings. The Ark must never be grabbed like luggage. There is that famous story where a man reaches out to steady it as it tips, an instinctive, almost kind gesture, and drops dead on contact. Not smote after a long speech, not cursed over generations, just gone. Another episode describes whole groups struck down for looking at it wrong, as if the Ark is an exposed reactor core of holiness and human beings are walking around without lead shielding. Think about that for a second. An object so charged that reverence is not an emotion, it's a survival strategy. And this is where the symbolism gets sharp. The Ark is a point where heaven and earth are squeezed into the same coordinates. A compressed intersection of timelines where the infinite brushes the finite and the finite almost can't handle it. Protective, because if you belong to the covenant, that presence is your shield. Dangerous, because proximity to raw divinity is like standing next to the sun and trusting your sunscreen. It's not evil. It's not even vindictive. It is simply power at a scale that doesn't downshift easily into human existence. Somewhere else in our imaginary vault, though, people will dream up a different object to focus that same terror and desire for control. Not a throne this time, but a spear. A single sharpened line that legends say can decide battles, empires, even the exact trajectory of a crucifixion, with one precise thrust. We're going to walk toward that next, the spear of destiny, where history and myth try to pin the universe in place like a butterfly under glass. So you follow that sharpened line forward, and it doesn't just stop at a crucifixion on a hill. It keeps going, dragging itself through time, through empires, through the imaginations of people who really, really wanted the universe to have a visible on switch. The spear of destiny is that fantasy, the idea that the weapon that pierced Christ's side didn't just end a life, it became a cosmic key. Hold it and you win. Lose it and you fall. Here is the thing. In the earliest Christian texts, the spear is just a weapon, a detail. But later, as the Roman Empire Christianizes and rulers need a bridge between their power and a single distant moment in sacred history, the spear mutates. It becomes a relic. Suddenly, this isn't just iron. It's condensed timeline, a piece of the passion you can supposedly carry into battle like a portable crucifixion, a wish for victory hammered into metal. Let's start with how elastic its identity becomes. In Constantinople, there is a spear. In Jerusalem, there is another. In the Holy Roman Empire, yet another lance is paraded before armies, each one declared the true instrument that touched the side of God in human form. One spear is linked to Charlemagne, another to Otto. Another shows up in Habsburg treasuries. Centuries later, modern dictators will gaze at one of these lances and whisper about destiny as if history itself were a battery they could plug into. And every time, the pattern holds. A ruler wins a battle, clearly the spear worked. A ruler loses, clearly they lost the spear, or the real one was somewhere else. The artifact is never wrong. Reality just misfiled it. Think about that for a second. The Spear of Destiny becomes a narrative cheat code, a way to explain why some people seem unstoppable in their own era. Not because of logistics, or economics, or the terrifying complexity of the multiverse of human decisions, but because they're holding a metal bookmark pressed into the margins of sacred time. We're going to zoom out, just for a breath, because this is not unique. Mesopotamian myths had tablets of destiny that made whoever held them the administrator of fate. Medieval kings collected saints' bones, drops of holy blood, splinters of the true cross the way modern collectors hoard rare trading cards. Chinese emperors wrapped themselves in jade burial armor to anchor their existence beyond decay. Different cultures, different timelines, same desire to wield political power to an object that claims to sit at the center of time. This is relic politics. If you can't be present at the holy event, you claim you can hold it, touch it, lock it in a reliquary, and parade it through the streets. An artifact becomes proof that your rule isn't just you. It's a continuation of a cosmic story that started long before you arrived and will, you hope, justify everything you do. Pattern interrupt. Imagine all those contested relics in one quiet, impossible room. The spear, the tablets of destiny, jade discs, bone fragments, all shelved side by side like overqualified library books no one checks out anymore. No emperors, no generals, no dictators trying to wish reality into submission through contact with sacred metal. Just objects, finally out of reach of kings, their power reduced to whispers about the people who once believed that if they held the right artifact, the universe itself would have to agree with them. And once you see that, every next artifact we visit starts to look a little different. Less like a magic weapon, more like a mirror held up to whoever is desperate enough to claim it. Excalibur and the sword in the stone, worthiness as a lock. So now that the crowns and rings are back in their quiet glass cases, we move outside into the cold air of a courtyard that doesn't know it's historic yet. The crowds are gone. The banners are down. It is late enough that even ambition has gone home to sleep. And in the center of this almost empty square, there is just a block of stone, an iron anvil fused to it, and a sword waiting in the silence like a paused sentence. Let's start with the boy. He is not a king. Not yet. He is small in the way the future often looks small when you meet it too early. He is running errands, chasing someone else's desire, not his own. And because he needs a sword, and all the reasonable options have failed him, he wanders into this forgotten corner, sees the hilt, and reaches out almost absent-mindedly, as if this were just another tool left lying around by the universe. Here is the thing. The universe in this story has not left it lying around. The sword in the stone is not Excalibur, at least not originally. The sword in the stone is a test bench, a lock disguised as a weapon. Excalibur, the famous blade from the Lady of the Lake, arrives later, rising from dark water like an edit to reality itself. 2 artifacts, 2 timelines of kingship. Later retellings merge them, compressing centuries of legend into one iconic pull. But underneath the mashup, there are still 2 separate rules being followed. The first rule is brutally simple. Only the rightful king can draw the sword. Not the strongest, not the richest, not the one with the best marketing campaign. The metal and the stone together become a kind of cosmic keycard reader, an access panel bolted into the narrative of Britain. You pull or you don't. It moves or it doesn't. There is no negotiation, no recount, no second round of voting. The artifact has already decided. Think about that for a second. In a world where leadership usually comes from whoever can swing the sharpest blade or arrange the most convenient assassination, here is an object that claims to bypass violence and inheritance entirely. No battlefield, no palace intrigue, just a boy and a hilt and a rule. It is monarchy reimagined as a physics problem. Either your existence resonates with the enchantment, or it doesn't. The sword isn't judging in any emotional sense. It is just enforcing parameters written somewhere behind the center of time. And there is a comfort in that, especially if you are small and powerless and very aware that reality is usually not fair. We're going to keep seeing this pattern. Artifacts that promise the universe has already made up its mind about who should rule. That legitimacy is a hidden variable baked into metal. In Britain, it's a stone. In Japan, it will be a grass-cutting blade named kusanagi, not flashing on the battlefield, but resting almost unseen as a quiet, sacred proof that an emperor's right to rule is more than a wish. Kusanagi and the 3 sacred treasures of Japan. Let's start in the dark, not of a battlefield, but of a shrine interior, where the air is thick with incense and old wood. And the most important artifacts in an empire are hidden inside boxes, inside curtains, inside buildings you will never enter. No spotlights, no glass cases, just the quiet idea that somewhere in there, reality has been persuaded to recognize one particular bloodline. In Japan, that persuasion condenses into 3 objects: the sword Kusanagi, the mirror Yata no Kagami, and the jewel Yasakani no Magatama. Together, they are the 3 sacred treasures, the imperial regalia, the way the universe allegedly signed its name under the emperor's job description. Each one is tied to Shinto deities, to that soft boundary where nature, spirit, and political power blur. A blade, a reflection, a curve of stone, not random, not decorative, a mythic syllabus for how rulership is supposed to work. Here is the thing. Kusanagi is not just a cool sword. Its origin story is pure cosmic horror turned into cosmic housekeeping. The storm god Susanoo finds an 8-headed serpent, the Yamata no Orochi, a creature so huge it occupies an entire landscape, a living natural disaster. He gets it drunk, kills it, and in the tale he discovers a blade. The future imperial sword is literally extracted from the body of chaos. Rulership, in that moment, becomes the power to cut a path through terror and flood and formlessness. Think about that for a second. The right to rule is imagined as the reward for cleaning up the universe's mess. The mirror and the jewel complete the equation. The Yata no Kagami recalls the mirror that lured the sun goddess Amaterasu out of her cave, coaxing light back into existence. The Yasakani no Magatama echoes the curved jewels used in that same mythic negotiation. So you get a triad: a sword that conquers chaos, a mirror that reveals hidden light, a jewel that seals the bargain. Violence, vision, and legitimacy crystallized into a ritual toolkit. But in reality, you do not see them. They are wrapped, concealed, represented by replicas. Even some priests only ever meet their outer containers. Historians quietly debate whether the originals still exist, whether they were lost at sea, replaced, reimagined. And yet their absence does not erase their power. It almost amplifies it. The rules of this artifact set are strange. The less visible they are, the more they function. We're going to call that the difference between visible and invisible power. Excalibur wants you to watch it gleam. Kusanagi mostly wants you to believe the story. The regalia work not by cutting enemies in half, but by cutting uncertainty in half. The wish here is subtle. May everyone agree the Emperor is meant to be here. No lightning, no fireballs, just a shared narrative running quietly under the timeline like a political operating system. And somewhere else in this imaginary vault we're walking through, past the wrapped sword and the unseen mirror and the silent jewel, there's a very different philosophy of power waiting. A hammer that does not hide, that does not need a priest, that does not only symbolize worthiness, but enforces it physically with every impact. It will fly, it will fall, and then, against all reasonable rules of gravity and decorum, it will come back to its owner's hand with a thunderclap. Mjolnir and the logic of the unliftable weapon. Mjolnir is what happens when a weapon refuses to behave like an object. It is small, almost comically so. A short-handled hammer you could mistake for a blacksmith's tool if you ignored the way the air tightens around it. It calls lightning out of a clear sky. It smashes giants and monsters as if they were made of wet clay. And when it flies away from Thor's hand, it is not leaving. It is orbiting. Reality itself is the leash. Let's start with how it comes into existence, because here is the thing. Mythic artifacts almost never arrive in a clean, dignified way. In the Norse stories, Mjolnir is forged by dwarves, the absolute endgame crafters of that universe, working in the deep places under the earth where time feels thick and metallic. Loki, professional chaos consultant, interferes, distracting the smith at the worst possible moment. The result is a hammer that is flawless in power but flawed in ergonomics. Its handle too short, an immortal weapon with permanent T-Rex arm energy. Think about that for a second. One of the central anchors of divine power in the Norse timeline exists because someone was being annoying during the crafting process. And yet, the rules arrive with the metal. Thor can throw it at anything, at anyone, across any battlefield, and it will always return, homing back to his palm as if the universe remembered where it belonged. Giants can feel its impact. Walls can feel its impact. The ground can feel its impact, but almost no one else can truly lift it. Not because it is heavy in a normal gym membership way, but because the hammer is running a background check on your existence. In the older myths, that test is basically hardwired to Thor's identity. In later retellings, especially in comics, those rules get rewritten into a single sentence. Only the worthy may lift it. So physical strength becomes a proxy for moral and divine status. But with a twist, you cannot fake this. You cannot bribe the hammer. You cannot wish your way around it. The whole cosmos, for a moment, passes or fails you through the handle of a tool. And we're going to see that logic echo everywhere. Modern fantasy loves this test. Swords that blaze only for the chosen king, guns that refuse to fire for anyone but their bonded wielder, sentient grimoires that slam shut on unapproved readers like a very opinionated clam. It's the same pattern as the Mesopotamian tablets of destiny, or a sci-fi biometric lock, just dramatized into myth. Pattern interrupt. Slow down. Imagine a quiet shelf at the center of time, in some cosmic library where all these artifacts have been gently tagged and filed. Mjolnir rests there, utterly still. Beside it, Excalibur lies sheathed, the stone long since retired. No lightning, no glowing inscription, no hand reaching, no universe judging. Their rules are dormant because no one here is being tested. For once, power is just asleep. And that is the strange comfort of the unliftable weapon. It tells you that sometimes the universe does keep score, that there are rules baked into the metal itself. In the next artifact, the test will change again, not whether you can lift, but whether you can let go. Talismans, amulets, and the everyday armor of the soul. So we move from the weapon you cannot lift to the object you barely feel. No fanfare, no glowing runes, just a small charm against your skin, quiet as breath. If the last artifact shouted about worthiness, this one whispers about worry. It does not test your strength, it carries your fear for you. Let's start with the names. An amulet is usually there to repel, to push back harm like a tiny shield hanging from your neck. A talisman leans the other way, trying to attract what you want. Luck, love, victory, a slightly less cursed morning commute. Both are little negotiations with reality. Worn or carried, often inscribed with symbols, names, or prayers. Not a sword, not a crown, just everyday armor for the soul, hiding in plain sight on a bracelet, a ring, a folded scrap of text. Here is the thing. Once you start looking for them, they're everywhere in the human timeline. In Egypt, the Eye of Horus stares back from beads and pendants, stylized lines standing in for divine sight, healing, protection on the river, and in the underworld. In Jewish and Islamic traditions, you get verses of scripture, names of God, or intricate blessings sealed into tiny cases, worn close to the heart, the word made portable barricade. Around the Mediterranean, the Nazar blue eye hangs over doorways and dashboards, a cool glass iris watching for the hot glare of envy. Think about that for a second. An eye to protect you from other eyes. And far from those deserts and seas, indigenous medicine bundles ride on belts or rest under pillows, small wrapped universes of feather, bone, herb, and stone. Each piece has its own story, its own relationship with the land and the spirits, and together they become a private multiverse of protection. Not flashy, not theatrical, just a quiet agreement between a person, their community, and the more than human world. So how do these objects work? Not usually as cinematic miracles, not as coins you drop into a cosmic vending machine that spits out a guaranteed wish. They work like companions. You touch the pendant before you speak. You check the charm at the door. You feel the bundle against your chest when the night is loud. Your posture changes. Your choices tilt. The universe outside may not have shifted at all, but the universe inside your ribs has. And that is where a great deal of power lives. We're going to brush up, very gently, against the word placebo here. Is an amulet effective because spirits and deities honor the symbol? Because the rules of existence bend around that tiny inscription? Or because your nervous system, reassured, stops firing every alarm at once and finally lets you sleep? Maybe both. Maybe belief is the bridge between metaphysics and psychology, and the charm is just the handrail you hold while you cross. In that specifically Adventure Time way, reality doesn't have to pick one explanation. The charm can be genuinely enchanted and genuinely calming. The medicine bundle can speak to the spirits and to your heartbeat. The Eye of Horus can be a god's gaze and your reminder to look where you're going. The point is not to win an argument about what is really happening. The point is that, for a moment, you feel less alone in the universe. But protection has a shadow. For every pendant meant to guard you, there is a darker twin, a ring that will not come off, a mirror that reflects something extra, an object that does not watch over you at all, but waits very patiently for you to slip. Cursed rings, haunted mirrors, and objects that watch back. A ring waits more patiently than any predator. It does not stalk you. It does not roar. It just sits in a box or on a finger, pretending to be harmless, while time does the hunting for it. Let's start with that archetype, the cursed ring. Small, beautiful. Binding. In Norse legend you get rings like Anvur and Nort, dripping with gold and guaranteed disaster, poisoning every timeline it touches with greed and betrayal. In that specifically Adventure Time way, it's like a wish you never stop making just by wearing it. Later, stories refine this into the One Ring, A perfect loop of metal that doesn't just obey its owner, it auditions owners, slowly warping whoever holds it, whispering that they chose it, when really it chose them. Think about that for a second. Here is the thing about cursed rings. The power is never flashy at first. It is not lightning and fireworks. It is slow, incremental edits to your personality, to your desire, to your sense of reality. You become more jealous, more possessive, more willing to break your own rules to keep this tiny circle of metal close. The ring doesn't move. You move around it, like a planet trapped in the gravity well of an object that technically weighs almost nothing. Haunted mirrors take the opposite route. Rings cling to you. Mirrors wait for you to look up. A reflective surface is already strange. It shows you, but not quite you, delayed by the speed of light and the limits of your brain. Now imagine that surface is not passive. Medieval scrying mirrors, black and polished, were said to open onto other realms. Folklore mirrors trap souls if you die in front of them, or show you a future that should not be possible, or quietly replace your reflection with something that watches back. You check your hair, and the universe checks your heart. Narratively, these objects run on rules. Touch passes the curse, or ownership does, or bloodline. Sometimes the ring binds whoever willingly accepts it. Sometimes the mirror only activates when inherited. Like a bad family heirloom, the multiverse refuses to re-gift. And there are always conditions. Melt the ring in primordial fire, cover the mirror for 7 years, break it at exactly midnight, return it to the grave. We're going to see this pattern over and over. Precise, almost bureaucratic requirements for undoing what should never have been done. Psychologically, cursed artifacts are cheat codes for talking about obsession and guilt. It is easier to say, "The ring made me do it," than "I wanted that power." Easier to blame the mirror for showing you your worst self than to admit that part was already there. These objects externalize addiction, compulsion, self-sabotage. They offer a fantasy that you could just take the pattern off, lock it in a chest, throw it into the sea, and walk away free. Sometimes you can. Often, you only throw away the reminder. And yet, even these are small compared to what waits on the top shelf of our imaginary cabinet, because not every artifact is content to curse or protect. Some claim they can rewrite the rules of existence itself, turn base metal into gold, bend time, make a mortal body ignore death. Somewhere between a ring and a mirror waits a stone, a tablet, a quiet object that promises not just to haunt you, but to upgrade the entire universe. We should probably talk about those next. The Philosopher's Stone and the dream of perfect transformation. So let's open that cabinet and take down the quiet object with the loudest reputation, the Philosopher's Stone. In the dim laboratory of the European imagination, it glows at the center of time for alchemists. This impossible red-gold substance that can turn base metal into shining gold, boil disease out of the body, and, if you believe the more ambitious recipes, distill an elixir that lets a human being ignore death's usual schedule. Here is the thing. On the surface, it looks like a cheat code for reality. You take lead, that dull, heavy symbol of poverty and limitation, and you push it through secret fires and cryptic glassware until the universe blinks and hands you wealth, health, and maybe immortality. But alchemists were not just early chemists in funny hats. They were running a double experiment, outwardly, with furnaces and alembics, inwardly, with their own fear and desire. Let's start with that dual nature. In the texts, the same words that describe purifying metals also describe purifying the soul. You separate, dissolve, coagulate. You burn away the impure. You recombine what remains into something radiant. Simple, declarative. They wanted gold. Vivid metaphor. They wanted to smelt a new self out of the ore of their existing life, to compress regret, pride, and grief until it crystallized into wisdom. The stone, in that specifically Adventure Time way, obeys rules. It is not easy, it is not quick, it is the final boss of the laboratory. The recipes insist you need decades of discipline, exact timing, planetary correspondences, and usually a moral upgrade. Greed alone cannot make it appear. Cowardice contaminates the mixture. In a lot of stories, the would-be alchemist fails not because the universe lacks power, but because their character introduces a hairline crack into the experiment. Think about that for a second. This is a universe where you can, in theory, wish metal into gold, but the wish has to travel through your own heart first, and the heart is the weak glass in the apparatus. It's a cosmic safety feature disguised as a riddle. Unearned power isn't just dangerous, it's chemically impossible. And here comes the pattern interrupt. The Philosopher's Stone is basically a save file for the soul. Imagine if, after enough careful grinding and heating and waiting, you could hit overwrite on your current build, restore health, upgrade stats, export yourself to New Game Plus reality. Absurd, but also not. Because that is exactly how medieval and Renaissance minds talked about it, as a total patch to existence. Then the language slides back into smoke and midnight. Picture a lone figure in a cold room, watching metal cycle through colors, black, white, yellow, red, as if it's replaying the whole timeline of creation in a single crucible. Outside, the world decays. Plague, famine, debts. Inside, there is this rumor that somewhere matter hides a back door, a little red stone that says, entropy is not the final rule. That rumor is a lullaby. In a universe where bodies age, empires rot, and every artifact we've mentioned eventually crumbles, the Philosopher's Stone whispers that perfection is not a myth but a phase change. That may be, if you endure the heat long enough, you can step across a boundary where lead and life both remember what they were meant to be. We're going to leave them there for a moment. The sleepless alchemists, faces lit by coals, because the dream of perfect transformation doesn't just stay in the lab. It leaks into crowns, swords, and quieter objects that promise different kinds of upgrades. The stone wants to fix the universe from the inside out. Our next artifacts try to rewrite it from the outside in. Forbidden grimoires, books as dangerous artifacts. Those crowns and swords try to rewrite the universe from the outside in. But there is another kind of artifact that doesn't swing or shine. It just lies there, closed, waiting. And somehow that is more terrifying, because the next objects on our shelf are books that promise not a sharper blade, but a sharper reality. Let's start with the grimoire, the magical manual as artifact. These are not casual notebooks. They are handwritten blueprints for bending existence, diagrams of circles and candles, sigils like tiny circuit boards for the invisible invocations, arranged like passwords to a cosmic operating system. The Key of Solomon, the Lesser Key, the Heptameron, half-threat. So they attribute them to legendary figures like King Solomon, the archetypal wise king, as if to say, don't worry, a stable adult signed off on this. Think about that for a second. Here is the thing. People did not treat these as just books. Monks copied them in careful, almost anxious script. Owners hid them in chests under floorboards. Some libraries literally chained them in place, iron links biting into leather, as if the paragraph on page 73 might get up and walk off in the middle of the night. Others chose the opposite solution and burned them, on the logic that if you throw the right ink and paper into the right fire, an entire possible timeline of disasters goes with it. Because a grimoire is framed as a door, not a metaphorical door, a door with measurements, it will tell you the exact hour of night, the phase of the moon, the color of the thread, the kind of incense, the metal of the blade. It will insist on baths, prayers, fasts, circles, triangles, names of power. And then, in tiny ink between the lines, there is always the same warning. Misread a word, smudge a sigil, stand in the wrong corner, And you do not get your wish, you get something else. You get the universe answering in its own accent. The rules are obsessive. One angel only appears on Wednesdays in the first hour after sunrise. One spirit requires virgin parchment from a specific animal. One operation demands that you not speak to another human being for a set span of time. It sounds fussy, almost comedic, until you realize that all that detail is really about fear. Fear that if language really can puncture reality, then a single stray syllable is like leaving a candle next to a leaking gas line. So entire cultures develop a quiet horror of text, not of ignorance, but of the wrong sentence. The idea that certain words, in a certain order, are volatile, and that a book is essentially a bomb made of grammar. You read aloud, and the air rearranges. You whisper a name, and something in the multiverse turns its head. In that specifically Adventure Time way, language becomes a wish engine, with no safety rail shelved politely next to the sermons. And we're going to follow that anxiety as it shifts from summoning presences to summoning possibilities. Because while some books tried to pull spirits into the room, other artifacts tried to pull visions into time itself. Quiet tools of oracle and divination that invite tomorrow to visit tonight and ask reality to show you the outline of your own future before you close your eyes. Oracles, lots, and the tools that let the future speak. Let's start with the sound, not of a voice but of objects moving, the soft clatter of carved bones on a wooden tray, the whisper of yarrow stalks sliding through careful fingers, the tiny collision of marked pebbles as they settle into a pattern that didn't exist a second ago. No thunder, no prophecy booming from the clouds, just small impacts in the dark, as if the universe prefers to answer big questions with very quiet noises. Here is the thing. Before you can read the future, you have to give it something to land in. So humans invent containers for fate. In ancient temples and cramped bedrooms, people cast lots, little pieces of wood or stone, each carved with signs that only make sense inside their rule system. They throw knucklebones, polished and inscribed, watching which faces look up like tiny, smug constellations on the floor. They pull runes from a bag, each rune a fragment of a language that claims to speak fluent destiny. Think about that for a second. You take the chaos of time and you force it to choose a side of a bone. In China, diviners heated turtle shells and ox scapulae until they cracked, then read the fracture lines as the universe's handwriting. Oracle bones are literally that, the future etched as burn marks in calcium, questions to royal ancestors, scorched into reality. Centuries later, the I Ching refines that impulse into hexagrams, 6-line diagrams generated by yarrow stalks or coins, a structured randomness where every pattern has a commentary. And every commentary quietly implies that your wish and your fear are already woven into the same timeline. At Delphi, the future sat on furniture, a priestess balanced on a tripod above a chasm, laurel leaves in hand, breathing vapors and speaking in fragments while attendants shaped her sounds into sentences. Not a floating hologram, a woman on a 3-legged chair at the alleged center of time for the Greek world. The tripod, the laurel, the bowl of water beside her. These are tools, like Prismo's couch and pickle jar, ordinary objects drafted into cosmic duty. And none of this is free-for-all chaos. There are rules. You ask once, not 20 times. You phrase your question carefully. You don't cast lots while drunk. You don't throw bones just to see what happens. You don't badger the oracle about whether your neighbor secretly hates you. The gods, like any overworked cosmic civil service, dislike being pestered. Systems like the I Ching or runic casting come with entire manuals of conduct, as if the universe will only answer if you respect its bureaucracy. But beneath the procedures, there is comfort. Divination turns the terrifying openness of tomorrow into a small, graspable pattern. You can hold the bone, arrange the stalks, trace the cracked line with your fingertip. The future becomes a symbol, then a sentence, then a story. Not certainty, never that, but a story you can fall asleep inside, a sense that existence is at least taking your question seriously. And yet we're going to see that some artifacts didn't stop at answering questions. Some of them were designed to patrol the border of sleep itself, to stand guard at the edge of your dreams like tiny night watchmen, catching the nightmares before they could even land on your pillow. Dream catchers and night wards. Sleep as sacred territory. Some of them didn't just watch the border of sleep. They climbed up above it, hung themselves over it, wove their bodies into nets and said, "Nothing passes into this mind without going through me first." Here is the thing. For a species that spends a third of its existence unconscious, we have always been very concerned about quality control. Let's start with the dream catchers. Long before they became souvenir shop decorations, they belonged to specific indigenous traditions in North America, especially the Ojibwe. In those stories, a spider-woman guardian wove webs to protect children from wandering harm. And when people spread out across the land, and she could no longer watch them all, she taught mothers and grandmothers to weave instead. So a hoop of willow, a web of sinew or thread, and suddenly the night above a child's bed becomes a small personal center of time, where every passing dream has to obey the rules of the circle. The construction looks simple. It is not. The hoop is the horizon, the boundary of your tiny universe for the night. The web is reality edited, a lattice where bad dreams are meant to snag like insects. Held until dawn dissolves them. The gap in the center is a doorway. Good dreams slip through that opening, follow the feather, and drift down into the sleeper. Beads can mark important knots in the timeline of the web, each one a star, a guide, a remembered ancestor. This is not just craft. This is a quiet negotiation with existence. You sleep, the artifact keeps watch. And once you notice that pattern, you start seeing night wards everywhere. Protective inscriptions carved above a bed in Mesopotamia, where demons had to read the words and lose their momentum. Little lamps left burning in ancient houses, not because people were afraid of stubbing their toes, but because light itself was treated like a tiny wish against the dark. Charms tucked under pillows in Europe, iron nails at thresholds, knives under mattresses in some folk traditions. Verses from holy texts folded and sewn into cloth amulets. Different cultures, different aesthetics, same desire. If something is going to visit me in the dark, it will have to get past my paperwork first. Think about that for a second. Because emotionally, these artifacts are doing something very precise. They are admitting that sleep is vulnerability, that your body lies there with its defenses offline, while your mind wanders the multiverse. They turn the bedroom into a ritual space, a low-budget temple where the altar is a mattress and the priest is a hoop of wood and thread. You close your eyes, and the universe does not become less dangerous, but you have declared this square of reality defended. And now, quick pattern interrupt. Imagine that somewhere in our imaginary cosmic archive, above the shelves of swords and tablets and philosopher's stones, there is a dream catcher the size of a galaxy. It hangs over you right now. Its web is strung between timelines, catching the harsh, jagged stories, letting only the gentlest narratives drift down a sound. We're going to borrow that, just for tonight. Not to filter your wishes, but to let the softest version of this story be the one that reaches you as we move on to the artifacts that didn't just guard sleep, but tried to rewrite what dreams could show. Scrying mirrors and still water, gazing into other worlds. So now the web is strung, the harsh edges are muffled, and we're lying there under its quiet geometry. And into that hush, someone, somewhere, lowers a black mirror. Not a screen, not a device, but a slab of polished night that stares back at you without blinking. It does not shine, it absorbs. Let's start with the word for this, scrying. To scry is to gaze into a reflective surface until the ordinary rules of seeing loosen and images arrive that feel like they're coming from somewhere else in the universe, even though they're also clearly rising from you. Water in a bowl, glass in a window, a mirror gone dark in candlelight. Here is the thing: the surface doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be patient. Historically, people have been doing this for a very long time. John Dee, the Elizabethan mathematician who treated reality like a code you could debug with angels, used an obsidian mirror that almost certainly came from Mesoamerica, a disk of volcanic glass once tied to Aztec power and prophecy. Aztec priests watched gods swim up through that same black sheen. Centuries later, Dee watched for angels in the identical darkness. Think about that for a second. 2 empires, 2 languages, 1 piece of cooled lava acting as a cross-cultural portal in the multiverse of human desire. Outside palaces and courts, you get quieter versions. A girl on a European farm, turning the household mirror to the wall all year, then on one liminal night, using it to glimpse the face of a future lover. A wise woman in a village, pouring water into a simple bowl, asking it to show whether a traveler still exists on their timeline, or if their story has already slipped out of time. Not loud miracles, just small negotiations with the unknown. And these mirrors, these bowls, they come with rules. You don't scry at noon in a marketplace. You sit in dim light where reality is already a little uncertain at the edges. You prepare. Prayers, breath work, a whispered wish, sometimes circles of protection drawn so carefully they feel like geometry at the center of time. You wait until the surface stops reflecting your face sharply and starts holding a softer, stranger version. What you see is rarely literal. It's symbolic, fragmentary, like a dream that hasn't decided what genre it wants to be yet. Because we're going to be honest about what's happening here, the mirror is not a television tuned to some other world's live broadcast. It is an externalized mind. You project inward material outward, and then, in that specifically Adventure Time way, you pretend to be surprised when the universe answers in your own metaphors. The power feels cosmic, but the source is intimate. The glass is only the stage where intuition, fear, and wishful thinking put on costumes and rehearse. And yet, that doesn't make it fake. It makes it a ritualized conversation with your own existence, with timelines you might take and timelines you will never touch. A black mirror is a slow question. A bowl of still water is a pause in which reality is allowed to suggest alternatives. Watch how the pattern shifts, though. Scrying mirrors invite visions. They coax images to appear on a flat surface. But the next artifacts don't wait quietly on the table. They breathe. They burn. They turn the air itself into a medium. Incense burners, censers, ritual tools that smoke and ring and glow. Those don't just show you other worlds, they invite presences into this one, filling the room, and maybe your dreams, with a different kind of artifact-assisted sacredness. Incense burners, bells, and the small tools of sacred space. They move now, not the big dramatic relics that split mountains or rewrite dynasties, but the quiet machines of atmosphere. Small braziers breathing in grainy resin and exhaling entire landscapes of scent. Little bells that can cut through conversation more cleanly than any sword. Here is the thing. Before anyone calls a god, they usually light something, or ring something, or pour something. Let's start with the incense burners. Metal or clay, hanging on chains or squatting on 3 tiny legs. They look almost harmless, like the universe's most patient teapots. You drop in solid resins, frankincense in a Mesopotamian temple, copal in a Mesoamerican shrine, and with a bit of coal and time, they begin to transmute. Solid becomes smoke, and that smoke doesn't just smell nice. It redraws the boundary lines of reality. One moment you are in ordinary time, with errands and obligations and the low-grade static of your day. The next, the air has texture, the light has weight, and you have stepped, quietly, into ritual time. Think about that for a second. No portal, no glowing artifact of impossible power. Just the air, made different. In Egyptian tombs, in Indian puja rooms, in Chinese ancestral halls, the burner says, "From here on, we pay attention." The curls of smoke move like a visible clock, measuring the ceremony in spirals instead of seconds, marking a timeline where the important events are breaths, not battles. And then there are the objects that don't burn. They ring. Bells, bowls, chalices. A Tibetan singing bowl humming at the edge of audibility. A small brass bell in a Shinto shrine. A chalice lifted in a medieval church catching wine. And also a whole community's focused desire for contact with something beyond. These are not weapons. They don't blast enemies across the multiverse. They start things, they end things. They tell everyone in the room, across cultures and centuries, that the scene has changed. Their magic lives in coordination. We're going to call it low-voltage enchantment. A bell rings, and dozens of nervous systems reset to the same beat. A line of sensors swings down a cathedral aisle, and the congregation's breathing slows to match the pendulum of smoke. No lightning, no visible wish granted, but the reality in that room has shifted. The rules of attention have been edited. You actually know this magic very well. You just use different artifacts. A candle on your nightstand, a lavender diffuser, a white noise app murmuring artificial rain from a little plastic rectangle. None of these claim to command gods, and yet they do exactly what the old burners and bells did. They carve out a small center of time inside your evening, a repeatable sensory pattern that tells your body and your jumpy late-night thoughts that existence is allowed to power down. In that specifically Adventure Time way, it's almost funny. The most reliable reality-bending tools are the ones that only promise a vibe, not immortality, not conquest, just a predictable doorway from one mental timeline to another. And after walking past all these quiet devices of smoke and sound, we've arrived at a different threshold. Because if incense, bells, swords, mirrors, and world-ending spears all work on you using strangely similar tactics, then there might be deeper rules hiding underneath them. In the next part, we're going to step back from the shelves and ask a bigger question. What secret pattern have all these artifacts been obeying this whole time? And what happens if something breaks it? The hidden rulebook of ancient artifacts. So let's start there, at that bigger question. With all the artifacts you've met so far laid out on an invisible table, glimmering very quietly in the dark. Swords in stone, jade discs, heart scarabs, tablets of destiny, tridents and thunderhammers, all waiting like tools in a cosmic workshop. If you blur your eyes a little, the individual myths fade, and what's left is a pattern. Here is the thing. Almost every artifact runs on rules, clear conditions of use, limits, cool-down timers baked into ritual. One ring that only works if you put it on. One heart scarab that only activates in the courtroom of the dead. One spear that must taste blood every time it's drawn. Most of them have a primary job: protect, curse, reveal, or legitimize. The Egyptian scarab protects by silencing the heart. The haunted mirror reveals what you shouldn't see. Excalibur doesn't just cut, it legitimizes a king's existence. But then you get the edge cases, the moments where the universe's own paperwork glitches. The tablets of destiny in Mesopotamian myth can be stolen. Whoever holds them becomes the administrator of fate. That should not be hackable, and yet the story lets it happen once, precisely so reality can panic and slam the system restore button. The Indian astras that are misused, or fired in anger rather than in dharmic necessity, don't just hurt people. They warp the moral timeline, and the narrative immediately starts engineering ways to seal them, recall them, or punish the user. Think about that for a second. When an artifact breaks its own rule set, the story treats it like a cosmic bug report. There is always a correction, a flood, a curse, a hero's quest to put the weapon back where it belongs. The message is not power is random. The message is even the exceptions are part of a higher pattern you can't see yet. And if you compare artifacts to the other big archetypes, gods, spirits, heroes, you feel the difference. Deities are moody. Spirits negotiate. Heroes change their minds halfway through a quest. Artifacts are boringly consistent. They do what they do every time. That predictability is their power. It is also their weakness. You cannot kidnap a god easily, but you can absolutely steal a hammer, swap a ring, misshelve a grimoire, and suddenly the balance of the universe is in the wrong backpack. So we're going to reframe them as contracts, not metaphors for contracts. Actual agreements between humans and the cosmos, written in metal, stone, and repeated ritual. A jade buy disc that preserves your body is a signed deal about what happens to you after time finishes with your bones. A royal spear that only the rightful king can lift is a legal document in weapon form. Now imagine, just for a moment, that as Arthur reaches for Excalibur, a translucent pop-up appears over the lake. By proceeding, you agree to the terms of sovereignty. Power non-transferable. No refunds. Or, Thor grabs Mjolnir and has to scroll to the bottom of an Asgardian end-user license agreement to tap, "I accept." It is ridiculous, yes, but only because the interface is modern. The logic is the same, and in that specifically Adventure Time way, once you see artifacts as contracts, the whole multiverse of legends rearranges. You start noticing who is allowed to sign, who is tricked into signing, who finds a loophole, and who tries to tear the contract up and discovers that reality keeps a copy. As you drift further into the dark, the next question waits. If these are all contracts, then who exactly is the other party holding the pen? Tests of worthiness. When objects judge their owners. So if artifacts are contracts, here is the thing you notice next. Some of them read you back. They don't just wait for a signature. They flip the page, look you in the eyes, and decide whether you even get a pen. You're not only holding Excalibur, Mjolnir, or a jeweled crown. In a quiet, unnerving way, they are holding you. Let's start with Excalibur, gleaming in the stone or rising from the lake, depending on which timeline of the legend you drift into. The sword does not negotiate. It will not budge for ambitious warlords or politely interested bystanders. Only Arthur. Only the one the story calls right-wise king. The test is physical impossibility on the surface. You either lift it or you don't, but beneath that, it feels like the metal itself is running a background check on your existence. It weighs bloodline, destiny, maybe even the shape of your desire, and then decides whether reality will cooperate with your hands. Mjolnir does the same in that specifically Adventure Time way of being both literal and symbolic at once. It's just a hammer. It's also a cosmic verdict. For Thor, it is light as habit. For the unworthy, it might as well be fused to the center of time. The sagas never give you a clean checklist for worthiness. They only imply courage, honor, and a refusal to duck out of the apocalypse. Think about that for a second. An object that can flatten giants is also quietly grading your soul. Regalia works like this too. Crowns that burn the wrong temples, scepters that refuse to shine. In some traditions, the king's body must be unblemished. In others, only the bloodline matters. You get ritual purity tests, genealogical passwords, moral conditions disguised as etiquette. Egyptian heart scarabs were placed over the dead so their hearts would not betray them during judgment. A tiny amulet trying to hack the cosmic exam. The message is the same. Power comes with a quiz. There is comfort in that. If artifacts judge, then maybe the universe is not random. Maybe there are rules, even if they're written in a language only metal and jade can read. But there is danger too. What if the criteria are opaque or biased? What if a forged relic pretends to be a holy blade and passes every human test while failing every ethical one? We're going to quietly admit that an object that only responds to royal blood is also an object that can lock whole populations out of power, no matter their courage. Modern fantasy can't stop replaying this. Wands choose wizards, rings whisper to bearers, sentient swords sulk if you're boring. The chosen one object is a wish for a fair sorting algorithm in a messy multiverse, a way for reality itself to say, you, not them, without having to explain the rubric. And yet, as you sink deeper into the dark, another category of artifact waits. The ones that don't just pick people, they pick timelines. They reach past worthiness and start editing the script, as if someone hid a cosmic edit button in the props department of existence itself. Reality rewriting relics, tablets, stones, and secret names, those are the artifacts that choose a person. Now we get the ones that choose a reality. Let's start back in ancient Mesopotamia, where the universe allegedly runs on clay tablets. The tablets of destiny aren't just divine office decor, they're cosmic admin credentials. Whoever holds them doesn't just read fate, they write to it. Gods go to war over these slabs because they function like root access to existence itself, a login token to the back end of the multiverse where the rules of time, power, and hierarchy actually live. Here is the thing. In those myths, when a god steals the tablets, the sky doesn't just look different. The hierarchy of heaven reboots. Storm gods lose their job. New kings of the cosmos get installed like buggy software updates. Think about that for a second. An entire pantheon's legitimacy compressed into a portable, stealable object, as if reality were one nervous database, hoping nobody guesses the password. You see the same fantasy of control in name magic. All across the ancient world, people start engraving the universe like it's a command line. Egyptian heart scarabs are carved with spells that tell the heart, at judgment, to shut up and not snitch on the deceased. Jewish and early Christian amulets stack the names of angels into tight geometric clusters, little text-based firewalls meant to repel demons and disease. Medieval grimoires promise that if you inscribe the true name of a spirit on metal or parchment, you don't just talk to it, you compel it, like hitting enter on a very risky command. Names become passwords, not metaphors for passwords. Actual, whispered credentials for crossing boundaries you were not supposed to cross. Say the secret name of a god, wear it against your skin, and suddenly the asymmetry of power narrows, at least in theory. A mortal with the right syllables becomes an edge case in the cosmic security model. And then, much later, the philosopher's stone shows up like the final escalation of this desire. We're going to move from managing spirits and destinies to editing the periodic table. The stone in alchemical imagination doesn't just bend matter for an afternoon. It rewrites the rules of what matter is allowed to do. Lead into gold, sickness into health, mortality into something suspiciously like a software license that never expires. It is a wish, crystallized. What if the universe's hardest limits were just settings in a menu we haven't found yet? Underneath all of these relics is the same quiet proposition. Reality has an interface. Somewhere behind the visible world, there is a dashboard. Tablets, stones, inscribed rings. They're all different ways of saying, if you had the right object, the right name, the right line of script, you could log in and change the settings. Not negotiate, not pray, edit. And once you start imagining artifacts that can do that, a strange question appears in the dark beside you. If the right word on the right tablet can overwrite existence, how solid was existence to begin with? In that specifically Adventure Time way, the boundary between the dreamed and the real starts to wobble, and the next shelf of artifacts isn't going to respect that boundary at all. Are artifacts real, or do we dream them into power? So here in the wobble, here in that soft place where tablets rewrite reality, and you're half a step from sleep, we have to ask the question out loud. If everyone stopped believing in an artifact story, would it still work? Or Are we the ones quietly plugging it into the universe? Let's start with something deceptively simple: a relic in a glass case. Maybe it's a splinter of the true cross, or a fragment of a saint's bone, or a holy spear that allegedly pierced a god. Historians argue, carbon dating disagrees, provenance documents evaporate in the archival equivalent of a magic trick. And yet, people line up. They touch the glass, they whisper wishes into the air. Pilgrims walk away healed, or comforted, or at least rearranged. Here is the thing: the doubts about authenticity do not cancel the power. They coexist with it, like two overlapping timelines in a small museum room that smells faintly of dust and candle wax. On the other end of the shelf, you get cursed objects, rings that supposedly ruin every marriage they adorn, mirrors that always bring misfortune, a book that everyone is afraid to read on a stormy night. Statistically, bad luck clusters around them. Because fear clusters around them, people handle them tensely, drive home distracted, notice every coincidence, and feed it back into the legend. The object is not evil. It is not even indifferent. It is just sitting there, while human expectation wraps around it like a second, invisible surface. Think about that for a second. What we're going to call this is ontological ambiguity. These artifacts live in a gray zone between physical object, story, and social agreement. The Japanese imperial regalia are a perfect example. A mirror, a sword, a jewel that almost no one is allowed to see, but that still anchor the idea of imperial authority. Or the many contested holy spears across Europe, each claimed as the spear, each surrounded by its own miniature multiverse of timelines, prophecies, and wars. Their power is not just in metal. It is in the way entire societies agree, tacitly, to treat them as if the universe had signed a contract. And that leads to the strangest possibility, that humanity is collectively dreaming certain objects into special status. We pick a stone or a sword or a shard of jade, and we pour desire and fear and hope into it until the universe has to route events around that point. The way water bends around a rock. At some scale, belief becomes a kind of quiet, distributed wish, changing what actually happens. Pattern interrupt. This is not that different from a bedtime story. A story you hear so often as a child that it solidifies into a location in your mind, a castle or a forest you can revisit whenever you close your eyes. Our vault is like that, a shared, whispered archive at the center of time, where we treat these artifacts as if they have cosmic power, and by doing that, we give them power over our dreams. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the map might be half the territory. So as you drift, you're lying in a room with no relics at all, and also in a universe overflowing with them, because every remembered object is here on these shelves. The next artifacts we pull out will keep playing with that line. Objects that might be nothing more than carved matter, and yet keep pulling reality toward them, as if the universe is humoring our collective imagination just to see what happens next. Artifacts as memory palaces for civilizations. So let's start from that shelf-lined universe and tilt it just a little until every artifact becomes less of a relic and more of a hallway. Not a hallway you walk through with your feet, but one you move through with memory, where each object is a door that opens into a whole interior landscape, a culture built for itself in the dark. Here is the thing. Long before anyone forged Excalibur or carved a heart scarab, humans already had a technology for storing entire libraries in their heads, the memory palace. You imagine a building, you furnish it with rooms, and in each room you place an object that carries an idea. The more vivid the object, the stronger the idea. A flaming sword on a marble table, a green stone heart on a golden scale, a jade suit hanging empty in a silent chamber. Think about that for a second. That is basically a user interface for the brain. Now imagine a whole civilization doing that, but in stone and metal instead of imagination. Excalibur is not just a sword. It is a mnemonic spike hammered straight into the timeline of Britain. When you picture it, you do not just remember steel. You remember rightful kingship, the wish for a ruler who is chosen, not self-appointed, the rules about worthiness encoded in the stone, and the lake and the hand that rises from the water. One blade, but it drags a whole constitutional myth out of the lake with it. Egyptian heart scarabs work the same way, but they bookmark fear instead of authority. They sit over the chest of the dead, inscribed with spells to keep the heart from testifying against its owner at judgment. See the scarab, and the entire cosmic courtroom of Osiris reboots in your head. The feather of Ma'at, the scales, the dread that your own body might betray you. A small carved beetle, but it carries the architecture of an afterlife's legal system. Chinese jade burial suits do it with continuity. Jade does not rot, that is the point. The universe eats everything, but jade resists, so wrapping a body in it becomes a wish for the self to keep existing past decay. Touch a single jade plaque in a museum, and for a moment, the whole Han Dynasty's argument with death comes online in your mind. That power can be worn into eternity like armor. And this is how transmission works. You do not need a priestly lecture. You just need to see the artifact or hear the story of someone else seeing it. Reality does the rest. The object is a physical hyperlink. Your brain auto-loads the myth, the warning, the desire. One crown, and you remember succession crises. One broken tablet, and you remember laws. One rusted spear, and you remember a god who once walked beside soldiers. Over time, those hyperlinks stitch together. A culture begins to feel like a single continuous person, moving through time, remembering its childhood through chipped idols and its midlife crises through cracked swords and burned manuscripts. The artifacts are not just in the center of time, they are how a civilization pretends it has a single, continuous existence at all. And yet, we're going to see that some of the most intimate memory palaces are not thrones or cosmic weapons, but tiny bundles and pouches worn under clothes, pressed against skin, carrying private universes no king ever got to read. Medicine bundles and personal altars. Portable worlds. So now we zoom in. Not to a throne room, not to a vault at the center of time, but to a hand reaching under a shirt, fingers closing around a small wrapped bundle pressed against skin. No gold, no glowing runes, just leather or cloth, stained with years of sweat and smoke, holding a private universe so compressed it almost disappears. Let's start with the apparent contradiction. A medicine bundle, in many indigenous traditions across the Americas, looks almost aggressively ordinary. Feathers, small stones, a twist of dried herbs, maybe a claw, a shell, a scrap of red cloth, a bit of tobacco. Individually, they are the background noise of the natural world. Together, once wrapped, prayed over, and given a lineage, they stop being objects and become one continuous presence, one long quiet wish about how a person wants to exist in reality. Here is the thing. You are not supposed to see inside. The power is not in you recognizing the contents. The power is in you recognizing that you are not the audience. There are rules. Who may open the bundle? When it may be unwrapped? What words must be spoken? What smoke must rise? What songs must be remembered before the leather thongs are loosened? Often only the keeper, or a designated elder, can open it, and not for curiosity, but for ceremony, for healing, for those moments when a timeline is about to bend. Think about that for a second. In a world obsessed with unboxing videos, here is an artifact whose entire dignity depends on never being unboxed on camera. No display case, no museum placard, just trust, privacy, and the knowledge that this bundle did not begin with you and will not end with you. It was assembled over time, guided by dreams, visions, obligations to land and ancestors, and each item was invited in, not collected like achievements in a game. Functionally, a medicine bundle is a portable altar, a microcosm. The keeper carries their relationship to the land folded into one packet, a feather from the bird that appeared in a vision, a stone from the river that nearly took their life, a herb picked at the exact hour an elder specified. Ancestors live there. Promises live there. It travels through initiations, marriages, grief, migrations. It is less an object and more a compressed biography, a personal multiverse of encounters between human and more than human reality. And notice how different this is from the grand artifacts we usually obsess over. This is not Excalibur waiting in a stone to decide who rules a kingdom. This is not the tablets of destiny rewriting the fate of gods. It is not about spectacular power. It is about guidance, about one specific life, moving through time, with a quiet, consistent companion that does not need to be seen to keep doing its work. We're going to follow that logic outward in a moment, because something strange happens later in history. Just as these bundles gather many small, ordinary items into one protected whole, our modern fantasies start gathering every ancient trope into sprawling fictional universes where 1,000 artifacts orbit each other like planets. What happens when the private altar explodes into a franchise of relics, each with rules, desires, and timelines of their own? From myth to fantasy, how ancient artifacts echo in modern stories. So when that private altar explodes into a whole franchise of relics, you get something familiar. The modern fantasy universe, where cursed rings, chosen one swords, and wish-granting crystals drift through the narrative like satellites. You see it in books, games, films, the whole multiverse of bedtime media humming in the background of your room. A ring that corrupts its bearer. A blade that only answers to the worthy. A lamp, a dragon ball, a cosmic cube that says, "Make a wish," and reality will listen. Here is the thing. None of that appears out of nowhere. Those cursed rings are walking in the footprints of older, quieter horrors, like Norse tales of weapons that demand blood every time they're drawn, or Egyptian amulets that can betray you in the afterlife if your heart is too heavy. The one ring to rule them all is just the latest echo of the tablets of destiny, where whoever holds the tablet doesn't just win a war, they become the administrator of fate itself, the cosmic middle manager of existence. Let's start with power that chooses you. Excalibur waits in a stone. Mjolnir refuses unworthy hands. In that specifically Adventure Time way, this is the same logic as a remote that only works for one user profile. The artifact is not neutral, it has preferences, or at least rules baked into its metal. When a lightsaber hums to life for a particular Jedi, or a video game sword lights up in the hands of the player character, you're watching the old trial by weapon myth translated into controller inputs and character select screens. Then there are the wish objects, the Philosopher's Stone dissolving lead and mortality, Prismo's pickle jar cosmos, Dragon Balls, Genie lamps, Chaos emeralds, Infinity gauntlets that let you pinch the timeline between two fingers. All of them are descendants of those Mesopotamian tablets and oracular stones and mirrored pools. One clear request, a constrained rule set, huge consequences. Think about that for a second. We keep inventing new universes, but we almost never invent new wish mechanics. We just reskin the interface. Why do these tropes persist? Because artifacts are portable plot devices. You can hold the stakes in your hand. They are rule systems you can see. This sword cuts gods, but only at dawn. This ring grants invisibility, but eats your desire from the inside. This time turner lets you bend time, but only in tidy clockwork loops. It's game design disguised as myth, or myth disguised as game design depending on which timeline you woke up in. And there is comfort there. In a digital world where power is scattered across passwords and distant servers, the fantasy of one solid object that can change everything feels like a physical cheat code the universe accidentally left under your pillow. You don't have to understand all of reality. You just have to find the relic and learn its rules. Pattern interrupt. Quietly. Right now, imagine your favorite modern magical item. A wand, a gauntlet, a keyblade, a little glowing cartridge from some game you loved. Watch it slide, without fanfare, onto a shelf between the tablets of destiny and an old, chipped scrying bowl. No hierarchy, no VIP section, just one more artifact in the long, sleepy archive of human desire. We're going to leave it there, humming softly, while we walk deeper into this cabinet, toward the stranger objects that don't fit so neatly into any genre at all. Edge cases and loopholes, when artifacts misbehave, but as you walk deeper, the shelves start to get messy. Labels are scratched out and rewritten. Seals are broken, then patched, then broken again. Here is the thing. Once you give power a physical address in the universe, you also invite every possible edge case, loophole, and late-night exploit attempt. Let's start with theft. In ancient Mesopotamia, the tablets of destiny were the cosmic admin password, the object that fixed who ruled heaven, earth, and the timelines in between. And in the myths, they are not dignified. They are stolen mid-war, dropped in rivers, snatched by bird demons, passed around like a divine USB drive nobody safely ejects. Whoever holds them controls fate, but whoever holds them also paints a target on their back. Think about that for a second. Even the script of reality itself is apparently vulnerable to being misplaced. You see this again and again. Temple relics captured in war, ark-like chests paraded as trophies, cursed jewelry palmed off as a dowry. A ring that guarantees victory quietly demands blood. A sword that never misses quietly refuses to stay sheathed. The artifact doesn't just obey the official rules carved into its legend, it obeys the black market rules of desire, greed, and please, let this be someone else's problem. Anxious little patches against cosmic exploits. Egyptian heart scarab amulets are placed over the dead so that, at judgment, the heart won't testify too honestly against its owner. Medieval grimoires don't just summon spirits. They specify the pentacles, seals, and protective amulets you have to bring along like magical antivirus. One object to call the presence, another to contain it, a third to send it away when the contract goes sideways. It is a whole ecosystem of tools nervously circling one another. And then there are the unintended consequences, the monkey's paw moments without the mustache-twirling genie. Someone wishes for invincibility and discovers they can't sleep or feel, trapped in an unending timeline of survival. A charm against drowning lulls a sailor into such overconfidence that he sails straight into a storm. A curse thrown in anger rebounds when the target happens to be wearing the right protective bead, folding the malice neatly back on the sender. The universe, in that specifically Adventure Time way, seems to enjoy extremely literal interpretations. What these stories keep whispering is that objectified power never fully behaves. It leaks. It misfires. It finds loopholes you didn't know were there. The tablet can be stolen. The amulet can fail. The wish can be granted in a way that exposes the hollow center of the desire that launched it. The moral architecture isn't just "don't touch this," it's "you can touch it." But the fine print will touch you back. And under all of that misbehavior, there's a quieter fear humming. The fear of having no power at all, and the equal opposite fear of getting exactly what you asked for. In the next stretch of shelves, we're going to move closer to that emotional core, to the artifacts that don't just bend reality, but mirror the person holding them. Power, fear, and the emotional physics of artifacts. So as we step into this quieter aisle of the vault, the noise of tricks and loopholes fades, and what's left humming under the glass is just this, raw feeling, distilled into metal and stone. Here is the thing. Before an artifact is a weapon or a key or a cosmic remote control, it's an answer to an emotion that won't let humans sleep. Let's start with the big, heavy one, fear of death. Not just the moment of dying, but the dread of judgment, of decay, of being weighed and found wanting by the universe. Egyptian heart scarabs are basically that fear turned into jewelry. They sit over the mummy's chest with a tiny inscription that says, in polite divine legalese, "Heart, please don't rat me out." The wish is simple. When the scales of existence tip and the feather drops, may my own body not testify against me. Chinese jade burial suits are the same emotion, different timeline. They wrap a prince or a princess in thousands of tiles, as if you could armor yourself against time, against rot, against the multiverse forgetting your name. Then there's the ache for justice and the ache to be rightful, which are not always the same ache. Excalibur is the fantasy that they might be. You pull the sword from the stone, and the universe itself signs the paperwork. Yes, you belong here. Yes, you are the one who should have power. Think about that for a second. It's not just about ruling Britain. It's about never again lying awake wondering if you're an imposter in your own life. The blade is proof, in solid, shining form, that you were chosen, not accidentally, but by cosmic design. But we don't only fear being powerless. We also fear what happens when desire runs the show. Cursed rings, the ones that demand blood or horde obsession, are anxiety made circular. They whisper, "What if you love something so much it eats you?" They're the dry, slightly mean joke the universe tells about addiction, about greed, about that voice that says, "One more wish, one more try, one more day with the precious and then I'll stop." Artifacts are safe containers for all of this. You can put terror of judgment in a scarab, lock it in a sarcophagus, and close the lid. You can hang your longing for protection around your neck as an amulet, or nail it above the door, and now the fear lives there, not loose in the dark. The danger is real in the story, but for you here in bed, it's framed, labeled, archivally stable. You can walk away from the shelf, the character in the tale cannot. And then, in the smallest drawers, there's loneliness, personal amulets, medicine bundles, that one chipped charm your ancestor refused to travel without. These are not about public power. They are about having a quiet companion that says, "I know you're carrying invisible burdens. I will walk the timeline with you." A stone in a pocket, a ring on a finger, a thread at the wrist. Tiny, portable friendships with the cosmos. Because we're going to zoom out one more time before we're done here, we're going to look not just at the artifacts, but at the vault itself, and ask a stranger question. What if this whole archive is also an artifact, built inside the human mind to hold everything we're afraid to touch directly? And if that's true, who or what is standing outside the door, holding the key? The vault as a dream, imagining a universal cabinet of wonders. So let's start with the vault itself again, because we left it on a cliffhanger with that invisible hand on the key. You're back in the doorway now, shelves stretching up and out, vanishing into a darkness that doesn't feel threatening, just deep. Labels glowing softly in the half-light, written in languages you don't know and somehow still understand. Every artifact humming at a different pitch, like a choir of small, patient universes waiting their turn. Here is the thing. None of this exists. Not in stone, not in glass, not at the literal center of time. The vault is happening entirely in your imagination, projected onto the inside of your skull like a private multiverse. And yet, as you listen, we're going to agree to treat it as real enough. Real enough that Excalibur can sit respectfully across from the tablets of destiny, that a Norse-cursed sword can share a shelf with an Egyptian heart scarab, each holding its own rules of power and consequence without collapsing into a generic magic sword category. That's the quiet function of this place. It's a mental map, a way to hold many cultures, many timelines, many myths in one room without flattening them. Not a blender. A neighborhood. Existence arranged on shelves. Mjolnir doesn't become the trident of Poseidon. They just happen to live in adjacent aisles, like slightly awkward roommates who nod at each other when they pass the cosmic coffee machine. Think about that for a second. How rare it is, in reality, to see different worlds of desire and fear sitting this close, without one trying to overwrite the other. The vault is also a dream space. It only exists while you're in it. When your eyes finally close and your thoughts dissolve into whatever your own brain decides to screen tonight, the shelves dim, the labels fade, the humming winds down like an old projector. It isn't a tragedy, it's maintenance. Tomorrow or a year from now, the moment you remember a cursed ring or a jade burial suit, or a haunted mirror, the doors swing open again and the whole architecture quietly rebuilds itself, with a few new corridors you didn't know you needed. In memory training, they talk about palaces, imaginary buildings where you hang ideas on doors and staircases. This vault is a memory palace scaled up to mythic proportions. Every artifact is not just an object. It's a doorway. Open the heart scarab, and you walk into Egyptian anxieties about judgment. Open the philosopher's stone, and you step into medieval obsessions with immortality and control over matter. Open a dream catcher, and you're inside a web of fears about what visits us at night. And here's the small pattern interrupt. This video is also an artifact. In this video, the voice you're hearing, the pacing, the way we keep circling back to the same cosmic room, that's all a constructed object of sound and story, designed to sit quietly on one of your inner shelves. Not a weapon, not a curse, just a soft, looping tool whose only real wish is to give your thoughts somewhere orderly, to drift until they finally decide to let go. In a moment, we'll walk a little farther down these aisles and listen more closely to what some of these artifacts are actually saying. But for now, you can just stand in the doorway, holding the key, knowing the vault will wait exactly as long as you need. Between belief and bedtime, artifacts as lullabies against chaos. So you're still in the doorway, key in your hand, the vault breathing quietly around you. And here is the thing. You're already doing exactly what every ancient priest, every worried parent, every wandering magician was doing with their artifacts. You are standing between the dark and the bed, holding onto a story so the universe feels a little less wild for a while. Artifacts always live in that in-between, between fear and comfort, between chaos and order, between the blunt fact of mortality and the soft, stubborn wish that there might be something more watching over the timeline of your existence. Think about that for a second. A Mesopotamian scribe clutching a tiny tablet of destiny seal, an Egyptian mother pressing a heart scarab to linen, you placing your phone face down on the nightstand and turning on a quiet video. Different centuries, same move. Let's start with the bedside. You have your own altar, even if you don't call it that. A glass of water, a lamp, maybe a book, a photo, headphones, a dream catcher hanging where the streetlight hits it. Ancient bedrooms looked different, but the logic was identical. Jade discs laid near a body to armor it against decay. Incense burners exhaling thin blue lines of smoke to persuade reality to be gentle. Tiny amulets tucked under pillows like passwords whispered to the dark. The rituals line up almost too well. You dim the light, they fed oil to a wick. You cue a playlist, they rang a bell or chanted a name. You check the lock twice, they drew a protective circle in chalk or ash. None of this changes the cosmic weather at the center of time. But it changes you. It gives your nervous system a script, a sequence of moves with clear rules, and in that specifically Adventure Time way, the rules are the comfort. Belief, though, comes in gradients. Some people trusted the Spear of Destiny, or Mjolnir, as literal engines of divine power, as if the universe itself had signed its name along the haft. Others held tokens they half believed in, appreciating them as symbols, as reminders that courage or love had existed once and could exist again. Both modes work. Literal faith can cradle you like armor, Symbolic faith can guide you like a nightlight. Either way, the artifact is a story you can touch. And tonight, this narrative is exactly that for you. You pressed play as if you were hanging an amulet over the doorway of your thoughts. In this video, we're going to wander through a multiverse of relics. But right now, the important part is simpler. The sound of a structured, gentle story, standing between you and the swarm of uninvited worries waiting just outside the vault. Listening becomes a soft spell, not to change external reality, just to redirect the stream of your attention until it flows somewhere calmer. We're going to take one more slow walk through the shelves together. A final pass. We'll visit a few familiar artifacts as the lights dim, watch their outlines fade, and let their names blur at the edges. The vault will close, not with a slam, but with a librarian's careful hand. And as it does, you can follow us down the aisle, step by quieter step, until the last door of the night swings almost shut. A last walk through the shelves, revisiting the greatest relics. So we keep walking, you and me, and this very patient librarian of the universe, past shelves that feel a little quieter now, as if even the dust motes are getting ready to sleep. The light is soft, the air is slow, and every relic we pass is less a weapon or a tool and more like a bookmark in the long novel of human desire. Here is the thing, none of them are really about power, not at the end of the night. They're about the feeling of not being powerless. Let's start with the tablets of destiny, resting like flat, unassuming stones that once claimed to govern the fates of gods and humans, a kind of cosmic spreadsheet that crystallized the comfort and terror of believing that reality ran on rules, written down somewhere by someone. Next, a row of Egyptian heart scarabs, smooth and dark and small enough to fit in your palm, yet imagined to silence the heart during judgment, condensing the hope that confession could be edited, that the universe might grade on a curve. Think about that for a second. The jade suits wait behind glass, each tiny plate wired to the next, a fragile armor against decay that promised emperors their bodies and names could keep existing past time's erosion. A delicate expression of the fear of vanishing and the wish to stay on the timeline just a little longer. Excalibur gleams nearby, less a sword than a verdict, embodying the belief that worthiness could be proven in a single impossible gesture, that leadership might descend from stone, like clean, sharp certainty. In another case, Kusanagi lies coiled like a quiet dragon, a blade of authority and storm, crystallizing the idea that the right person could literally draw order out of chaos. Mjolnir hangs heavy and compact, a hammer that always returns, encoding the fantasy that justice, once thrown into the multiverse, would come back to the hand of the worthy every single time. The Ark of the Covenant sits in our imagination like a box of concentrated presence, dangerous and holy, capturing the paradoxical desire for a god who is both unbearably close and safely contained. Nearby, the Philosopher's Stone just glows, an alchemical rumor that matter and mortality could be negotiated with, that existence itself might be persuaded to change its mind. Grimoires line a darker shelf, their pages full of rules and diagrams, the belief that if you copied the right words in the right order, reality would have to listen, like a cosmic customer service manual. Dream catchers hang light as breath, promising that nightmares could be filtered out of the night sky, while medicine bundles lie wrapped and modest, holding herbs and bones, and the quiet conviction that protection can be carried. Folded and tied. We're going to notice the pattern here. Every artifact demands something: worthiness, obedience, sacrifice, and offers something: safety, certainty, a slightly less terrifying universe. And as you walk, you're allowed to let their names blur, to forget which blade belonged to which king, which tablet ruled which heaven, until all that remains is the soft impression of shelves full of stories about fragile beings trying to negotiate with cosmic power. The details can fade, the feeling can stay. Because in this video of your mind, The vault is bigger than we've shown you, with whole aisles we haven't entered, objects we passed in the dark without a label, relics waiting patiently on unlit shelves at the center of time. They are still there, humming at the edge of reality, and if you come back another night, we might finally dare to open the one cabinet we've been walking around on purpose. Closing the vault. Big picture lessons from small objects. So we leave that cabinet closed for now, and just stand in the vault with the door humming behind us, surrounded by all these quiet watching objects. Here is the thing. Once you've walked these shelves, it's very hard to pretend that magical artifacts are only about power. They look like swords and stones and mirrors, but they behave like mirrors pointed back at us. Every blade, every ring, every dream-catching web is reflecting the same questions. What do we fear? What do we hope for? How do we wish the universe actually worked? Let's start with that reflection. The Mesopotamian tablets of destiny say, someone should be in charge of fate. Egyptian heart scarabs whisper, please don't let my worst moments define my whole existence. A jade burial suit quietly insists that decay is negotiable. Think about that for a second. Across timelines and cultures, people keep inventing objects that can negotiate with reality, as if the universe is a very stern teacher, but might be persuaded by a well-crafted amulet and a good argument. And even when an artifact claims divine origin, it is still deeply, stubbornly human. Mjolnir is about worthiness and identity, not just thunder. Excalibur is less a sword and more a performance review in metal form. The Spear of Destiny, the Philosopher's Stone, a haunted mirror or forbidden grimoire at the center of time. All of them are built out of our questions about justice, safety, meaning. Who deserves protection? Can what is broken be healed? Can we ever be seen completely and still be loved? There is a paradox running through all of this like a thin, bright crack. We imagine infinite power, then immediately wrap it in rules, trials, guardians. One wish per person. Only the worthy may lift it. The spell must be spoken exactly. It is not an accident. It is instinct. We know, even half asleep inside our own myths, that raw power with no rules is just the lich wishing for extinction over and over again. So we build tests into our fantasies the way the universe builds constants into physics. And if, right now, you feel very small compared to all these artifacts and all this cosmic history, that is completely correct. You are small. So were the people who carved the first protective amulet, or copied a medieval grimoire by candlelight, or hung a charm above a cradle to catch bad dreams. In this video of the human multiverse, objects are just the vocabulary we use to talk to the dark, to make the bigness of existence feel a little less sharp around the edges. So the vault begins to close. Lights dim, aisle by aisle. The shelves recede into darkness like timelines folding back into the center of time. Labels blur. Glass cools. You step backward without quite turning around, and then the door is not a door anymore, just the outline of your own room. Ceiling, walls, the familiar weight of your body. We're going to leave you here with nothing in your hands except a faint, quiet glow of understanding, as if some tiny artifact has been left on the bedside table of your mind, humming very softly, keeping watch while you drift away. Soft outro, leaving the lights on in the library. If the edges of the vault and the shelves and the quiet artifacts have already started to blur into whatever your brain is stitching together as a dream, that's all right too. Here is the thing. You were never required to remember every detail. Not every rune. Not every rule. Memory in this universe is like an old grimoire left half open on a lectern. Pages fade. Ink runs. A sentence about the tablets of destiny. A passing mention of a jade burial suit. One image of a heart scarab pressed over a silent chest in Egypt. That might be all that follows you out. And that is enough. The rest stays here, at the center of time, filed away. So let's start closing up for the night. Very slowly, if you're still awake enough to catch words, You can, if you want, whisper a tiny wish into the algorithm. A like, a subscribe, a note to yourself to return here whenever you need a calm voice wandering through the multiverse of old stories. And if you're not awake enough for that, if your hand never reaches the screen, that's fine. The universe will not revoke your library card. We're going to leave the door propped open in your recommendations, a small reminder that you can always come back to this vault when reality feels a little too loud. Think about that for a second. A playlist as a corridor, each video another shelf. Tonight was artifacts. Next time, it might be the myths of gods themselves, the strange office politics of Olympus and Asgard, or underworlds mapped like subway systems beneath existence from Mictlan to Duat to Hell, or cosmic beings who treat timelines the way you treat blankets, pulling one up, kicking another off the bed, rearranging the entire multiverse in that specifically Adventure Time way. If that sounds enormous, don't worry. You don't have to hold it all. You just have to rest. You let the power go quiet for a while, and the stories keep watch. Thank you for being here, not as a metric, not as a number on a dashboard, but as a person who let these old objects sit beside them for a few minutes at the edge of sleep. You shared your time, your attention, your very vulnerable half-awake brain with tales of rings and mirrors and dream catchers catching more than dust. That is its own kind of wish. Somewhere behind your closed eyes, the vault door swings in on soundless hinges. Shelves recede into the dark. One lantern remains, hanging above the central table, burning with a patient, amber glow. One by one, the artifacts go still. The last echo of their stories folds itself back into the quiet. The door eases shut. There is no slam, just a gentle click, like a bookmark closing around a page. The lantern stays lit on the inside. The vault is waiting. The stories are waiting. Whenever you wander back through sleep, or through the feed, the lock will turn, the light will be there, and the Library of Ancient Magic will remember you, even if you do not remember it. Appendix of Wonders, imagining your own artifact. So now the door has closed, the lantern is breathing its quiet light on the inside. And here is the thing, the vault is not actually finished. Not completely. Because there is one shelf that does not exist until you imagine it. One artifact that only appears when you close your eyes and let your mind do exactly what it already wants to do as it drifts towards sleep. Let's start with a very soft question. If you could borrow one artifact from any myth or any universe or any impossible dream, for a single night, for a single dream, with no side effects when you wake, what would it be and what would you do with it? Not own it forever, not rewrite the multiverse, just check it out like a library book from the center of time, use it in one private timeline of sleep, and then return it. No late fees, no curses, no cosmic audit. Maybe it's Excalibur, but not in a battlefield. You're just using it to slice moonlight on a quiet lake. Maybe it's Mjolnir, but instead of calling storms, you're gently tapping distant stars like wind chimes. Maybe it's the Tablets of Destiny from Mesopotamia, and all you do is flip through the pages, watching tiny letters rearrange the fate of ants, of raindrops, of forgotten comets. Think about that for a second. Absolute power used only to rearrange the dust motes in a sunbeam. We're going to make this as low effort as possible. You do not need lore accuracy. There are no rules lawyers here. Just let one object float up from the dark. See if it wants to be a ring, or a mirror, or a spear, or a small, unimpressive stone that somehow hums with quiet reality. Notice its weight in your hand. Heavy, like a jade burial disc laid over the heart, or light, like a dream catcher feather that only exists at the edge of your vision. Run your thumb along it, smooth like polished jade, or rough like a weathered grimoire that has watched centuries turn. Cool metal, warm wood, glass that feels like frozen breath. As you hold it, imagine the atmosphere around you changing. The air thickens like temple incense. or clears, sharp and cold, as if you opened a window into outer space and the universe is politely peeking in. In that specifically Adventure Time way, your imagined artifact is now canon in this private vault. By picturing it, you've added a new personal shelf to the archive, one only you can access. Not even Prismo gets this one. There is your life, your desires, your quiet fears, distilled into a single object that does exactly what you need it to do, even if you never say the wish out loud. And if the image is blurry, that is fine. If it flickers, that is fine. If all you get is a vague sense of holding something important, that still counts. The point is not visual perfection. The point is the feeling of safe guided wandering through your own existence with a prop your brain has conjured, just for tonight. Pattern interrupt, very briefly. If you remember this dream artifact in the morning, you could even leave a comment about it, as if you're filing a tiny field report to the cosmic librarians. And if you don't remember, then it just goes back on the invisible shelf, waiting, unbothered, not keeping score. So you can let the details go now. Let the colors drain, let the edges soften, let the power of the object dim down to a warm background glow. The vault remembers the shape, even if you do not. The universe is very good at holding on to lost wishes. Echoes of incense, modern rituals, ancient patterns. And while the universe is busy holding on to those lost wishes, you are still here, in this one small timeline, with your own private inventory of objects that never made it into any myth. Let's start with those. The chipped mug you reach for every morning, even though you own nicer ones. The necklace you almost never take off. The lucky charm in a drawer, the playlist you only play when you can't sleep. The oddly specific bedtime routine that has to go in the same order, or it feels off. None of these are labeled as magical in the user manual of reality. But here is the thing, your nervous system did not get that memo. To your body, these are talismans, not in the dramatic, curse-breaking, multiverse-shattering way of a spear of destiny or a jade burial suit, but in the quiet way that actually runs most of existence. A favorite mug is a domesticated grail. A playlist is a spell that rearranges the air into something your mind can live inside. A bedtime routine is a ritual corridor you walk down every night, closing doors behind you until only sleep is left at the end. Ancient people would have understood this instantly. They reached for amulets and incense burners when words felt too thin to hold their fear of the dark. You reach for your phone and open the same calming app. They traced the same pattern on a heart scarab, so the heart would stay silent in judgment. You trace the same pattern on your screen lock, and your breathing slows as the familiar icons appear. Different rules, same desire, to make reality a little less sharp, a little more negotiable. Think about that for a second without trying too hard. Across thousands of years, humans keep doing the same thing at the center of time in their own lives. When emotion overflows language, they outsource it to objects. A ring to promise, a photo to remember, a blanket to feel safe, a playlist to say it's okay now, when the words themselves have no power. We're going to call them ordinary, but your brain quietly files them under sacred. You don't have to move, but if you want, you can let one small artifact float to the surface of your attention. Maybe it's on the nightstand. Maybe it's in another room. Let it appear as if the universe has highlighted it with a soft cosmic cursor. And just mentally, thank it. Not dramatically, just a quiet internal nod. You made this timeline a bit safer. Somewhere, in some future museum of our age, that object could be under glass, labeled as an artifact of everyday protection. That is all it would take. Enough story, enough repetition, enough care poured into its surface, until the boundary between tool and talisman wears thin, and every ordinary object is only one more whispered use away from becoming an echo in the archive of the universe, still holding the shape of a wish long after you've fallen asleep. The quiet after the story, letting the vault fade. An echo in the archive of the universe, still holding the shape of a wish long after you've fallen asleep. So now, we let the archive dim. We let the labels on the shelves blur. Every precise name, every origin myth, every rule about who was worthy to lift what, begins to soften at the edges, like ink left out in the rain. Here is the thing. You don't need to carry the entire vault with you into sleep. You don't need to remember which tablet controlled destiny or which ring demanded blood. You can let it all go hazy. Let's start with that simple permission. It's okay to let go now. The universe of artifacts can keep cataloging itself without you watching. In your mind, those neat rows of Excaliburs and Mjolnirs and jade burial suits can drift out of focus, as if someone is gently turning down the resolution on reality. The titles under the objects dim. The glass cases fog. Not dramatically, just quietly, like museum lights on a timer. While the vault fades, we're going to shift your attention to something much smaller and much closer in time. The feeling of your body where it meets the bed. The weight of the blanket like a low-level gravity field holding you in your own personal center of time. Notice the way your ribs rise and fall and rise again. A tiny cycle in a vast multiverse of cycles. Air comes in, air goes out. That's it. Simple declarative. Cosmic metaphor. If your mind tries to sprint back to an artifact, that's fine. Maybe it flashes a heart scarab, still whispering about judgment. Maybe it drags in a cursed sword, still insisting on its rules. Think about that for a second. Even your wandering thoughts are just little relics of attention, doing what they were designed to do. You don't have to fight them. Each one can be a soft stepping stone back toward drowsiness. You touch the memory, you notice it, and then you feel the bed again, the breath again, the quiet reality of your room. You might hear something in that room, a car far away, a heater ticking, the low electronic hum of some forgotten device still holding its tiny portion of power. None of it needs interpretation, none of it is a quest. Sound arrives, and then it passes, the way a timeline flickers across one of Prismo's screens and then yields to the next. You are not required to keep up. It's okay to let go now. The vault will be here later. The archive of the universe does not depend on you staying awake to supervise it. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the artifacts can keep having their bizarre little side stories off screen, while you do the most radical thing in existence. You rest. So we turn out the last light in the library. One by one, the displays go dark. Excalibur sleeps. The tablets of destiny close themselves. Even the smallest amulet, the most anxious little charm, is told good night. And you too. Good night, listener. Good night, vault. We'll open the shelves again some other time. If you're still awake, a gentle meta invitation. But maybe, as the vault goes dark, your mind does not. Here is the thing. Some minds power down like a switch, and some are more like an ancient incense burner, still releasing curls of thought long after the flame has gone out. You are not doing sleep wrong. You are not failing the universe's bedtime check. You are just a consciousness with its own rhythm, still drifting at the edge of the museum while the artifacts pretend to sleep. So let's start there, in that soft in-between corridor where you are awake, but the world has already taken its shoes off. If you're still with me, we're going to give your attention a very small, very gentle job. Nothing with stakes, nothing with power. Just a tiny shelf in the center of time, no bigger than your two hands held together, floating in the dark. On that little shelf, place 3 artifacts from tonight. Only 3. Maybe Excalibur, still humming faintly with the memory of kingship. Maybe the tablets of destiny, those Mesopotamian cosmic spreadsheets of fate. Maybe a quiet jade disc, cool and patient, pretending it never guarded an emperor's existence. Think about that for a second. Of all the relics in the multiverse, which 3 followed you into this late hour? Let the first one settle on the left. Notice why it's there. Did you choose it for its power, or for its rules, or because some small image caught on your imagination and refused to let go. Then the second in the middle. Maybe that one is dangerous, a cursed ring that always demands a price. Maybe it is protective, like an Egyptian heart scarab whispering, "Shh, don't confess too much," at the final judgment. And the third, on the right, might be the strangest, the one you almost forgot until now. You do not have to remember their names. You do not have to pronounce anything correctly. This is not a test. This is just your private nocturnal museum label written in the language of half-dream. In this video, we walked through a whole universe of desire and consequence. Now your only job is to notice which small corner of that universe decided to stay. If, in the morning, any of that shelf is still there, you can come back. You can leave a little comment with your trio. You can ask for a deeper dive on one artifact or on the culture that forged it, and we'll open that drawer together some other time. Because this is the quiet promise. The story will still be here. This video and others like it will wait for you like a familiar corridor in a library outside of time, always shelved in the same place, always ready to turn the lights back on. For now, though, let the shelf blur. Let the sword, the tablet, the amulet lose their edges and fall gently back into the dark. Follow one breath, then another. The artifacts go first, then the corridor, then the voice, until there is only you and the slow, steady wish of sleep, reshaping reality in the kindest possible way. Final silence, leaving the door ajar. And as that wish of sleep moves through your body, we're going to walk back, very quietly, to the vault. The corridor is almost gone now, just a suggestion of space in the dark, like a memory of a hallway you once dreamed about. At the end of it, the great door waits, not looming, not demanding, just there, at the center of time in this tiny private universe behind your eyes. Here is the thing. The door is mostly closed, not slammed, not sealed, just pulled in until the latch almost touches, leaving a slim, warm line of light spilling out into the dark. Simple declarative. Gentle metaphor. It's the nightlight of this multiverse of artifacts, a quiet proof that reality is still here, still holding, even when you're not looking. Inside, every artifact has found its shelf again. Excalibur is back in its bracket. The tablets of destiny are stacked neatly, no longer trying to administrate the cosmos. The jade discs, the amulets, the haunted mirrors, all of them are still, their power wrapped in a kind of cosmic bubble wrap of silence. Their timelines are paused mid-sentence, commas hanging in the air. Think about that for a second. Entire destinies, just waiting. They are not gone. They are not demanding to be remembered. They are simply resting. The wish is on hold. The desire is turned down to a low, steady ember. In that specifically Adventure Time way, reality itself is on a snack break. On the other side of that almost closed door, the stories keep existing, but they are not moving forward. Not without you. They're like books half read, a page held by a fingertip, patient in a way only paper and legends and old magic can be patient. They can wait a night. They can wait a lifetime. Time is wide in there. Out here, though, in this smaller, softer universe of blankets and breath, there is nothing left you have to do. No rule you have to remember. No detail you have to hold on to in case there's a quiz later. There isn't. In this video, the test was never the point. You don't need to track the vault. You don't need to follow the timelines. You don't even need to care what any of it means. You are released from attention. You can let the whole archive slide out of focus, like a screen dimming itself when no one touches it. So let the last questions close. Let the last images blur. If a stray thought about some ancient spear or ring wanders through, you can just nod to it the way you'd nod to a stranger on a quiet street and keep walking into the dark. My wish for you now is simple. Safety, rest, gentle dreams that are kind to your mind and soft on your body and light on your heart. A long, unbroken stretch of time where nothing chases you, and nothing is asked of you, and the only power in the universe that matters is the rise and fall of your own breathing. The door waits, the light holds. The vault is there if you ever want to come back. For tonight, it closes a little more. And everything is quiet, and you sleep.